Touch that dial. You're now listening to Debate Talk Free Radio.
Brother B.A. Ben Abraham, and I'm your host of the Man Up segment on Debate Talk For You platform. The objective is for all brothers from different walks of life to come together, link up, and build on matters concerning all various stages of life. If anyone would like to reach out on concepts and ideas, you can reach Brother B.A. at radicalrhyme1984@gmail.com. Again, radicalrhyme1984@gmail.com. Tap in. Let's build. Shalom. Shalom.
Hey everybody, this is B.A. Ben Abraham, and welcome to Debate Talk For You, the platform, one of the most respected and highly debated platforms on the internet today. And today you're tuning in to the Man Up segment. And today we have a powerful concept or a powerful topic to discuss this evening with a special guest. And today's topic is being an Israelite according to how the Most High Yah or God called it. Again, being an Israelite according to what the Most High God or Elohim called it. And the reason being is why we decided to do this show is because within the Hebrew community and the Christian community as well, everybody has their own personal conception or idea or understanding of what it means to be an Israelite. Some people tend to butcher it and make it seem like it's about skin color. Some people think that it's about just being a religious zombie or whatever you would like to call it, people who are just so adamant on just being so super religious. But we read in the scriptures in the Torah in Genesis chapter 32, when Jacob had wrestled with the Most High, when he wrestled with the Malak or the messenger or the angel, he was called Israel. And we understand this Malak to be a messenger to send him the message. And there was a reason why the Most High had sent this messenger to tell Jacob this message. So if the Most High is calling Jacob Israel, then there's some most definite spiritual aspects to it, because the Most High is spirit. He is not bound to the flesh. He is not bound to our personal opinion. So when we call ourselves Israel or Israelites, we have to take into consideration of what the Most High called it, because he was the first to speak it into existence. And when and I'm going to say that much, I'm going to fall back. I'm going to allow our special guest, if he's here, Brother LEXX, he can introduce himself.
Shalom, shalom, shalom. Am I loud? Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Hey, thank you very much, Brother B.A., for allowing me to come on the platform. Also, Ken Sal Showtime. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, to be a representative of the community that I come from. I want to begin my dictation by first saying, first and foremost, all praise, all honor, all glory to the Creator. Yehovah is his name. Some of us may say Yahuwah. Still others may say Yahweh. But I think we all can agree that we're talking about the Tetragrammaton, which is the Eternal One of Israel. Again, this opportunity to speak is not something that's light, because in the short span of the 4 to 5 years that I've interfaced with Israelites online, I've noticed that there's a lot of Israelites who are not known but have an amazing contribution to share, but don't have the outlets to speak their truth. So I have to begin my dictation by, again, thanking for the opportunity to share, because I could tell you, again, there's a lot of people out there that have a lot to say but don't have these platforms. So anytime we get an opportunity to be on platforms such as this, it's an honor, and I don't mean that in any light way.
Well, thank you, Brother Lex. We appreciate you. And I'm going to let my co-host, I'm going to fall back. I'm going to allow my co-host to introduce himself real quick.
Shalom, shalom, Israel. This is the Anonymous Hebrew. Much like my brother Zion just did, I want to give all praises to the Most High, Yah. I'm excited about tonight's show. It is very exciting. I think he brought up another good point about him being able to be a voice. And it's going to be really nice to get here and sit here and be able to dialogue with someone who I do consider a brother. I want to make that clear, a brother. We all believe in keeping Torah. So we want to go through tonight and make it clear about how to keep Torah. And although there are some differences in our community, we want to highlight what we can do to unify. And in those things that we do disagree upon, we will build on those and we will work on those if need be, if they come up. But most importantly, like I said, we want to worry about building. And those that want to call in and maybe cause some strife or division, we will deal with those accordingly. But mostly, let's talk about how we can properly keep this, because the Creator has given us a way to keep this, whether we are in the land or whether we are in captivity. We know we are in captivity right now. And we will discuss this evening, Yah willing, amicably, how to properly go about keeping His commandments. And I yield at that.
Thank you, Anonymous. Appreciate that. And Brother Lex, we just want to just clarify some things to you real quick before we go into the discussion. What we're going to do, we're going to stay in the law and the prophets, and we're going to build, because we understand that's the foundation. So what we're going to do, we're going to build in the law and the prophets according to how the Most High called it, on what it means to be an Israelite. So what we're going to do, we'll expound a few scriptures, and what we'll do, if you would like to kindly interrupt, you're our special guest. You can most definitely add some things based on your understanding and what the Most High has revealed to you. But before we get started, Brother Lex, is there anything you would like to say before we get into the discussion?
Oh, absolutely. I want to say thank you to the brother Anonymous Hebrew. I want to definitely say peace, blessings, and shalom to you as well. It was a privilege conversing the other day with you brothers. I think that we had a really good bill, although it was a short span of time. And I'm hoping that to the glory of the Creator, we can have a nice, powerful bill tonight. So long our heart and our mind is in the right place, I don't think that we should do anything less than amazing. I really do believe that this people that the Creator created and called or surnamed Israel is a people that have a spirit that cannot be matched. The only problem is, as good as we can be is as equally as bad as we can be. And I'm just hoping that those who pay attention to this platform, those who may be calling in, while I don't want people to call in and be yes men and, just agree with us all night, I do adjure people to call in with insights and even critique that is geared towards edifying as opposed to just stirring up a controversy, because then we can't have a good dialogue, and that's just something that my spirit is not in. So again, thank you, Anonymous Hebrew, for joining in and for allowing me to share my thoughts tonight too.
Hallelujah.
Thank you, Brother Lex. We appreciate your words. So for those who are listening, this is about building, like Brother Lex has said in his comments. We're here to build. Our goal is to just edify, and that the Most High's will be carried out and His will be done. So earlier, the opening statements, I said that we wanted to build in Genesis 32. So I just want to look at something, because we're gonna. This is the core of what we're gonna bring out. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go to Genesis chapter 32, and I'm reading from the King James. And one thing about me, I'm very adamant about the King James in the sense that it's full of grammatical errors. So I like to use lexicons, and I have a strong concordance as well. So we'll do a few words. We'll look at a few words, and because we've done a few word studies. So what we're going to do, we're going to pick it up at Genesis chapter 32, and we're going to pick it up at verse 9. And this is Jacob. He's going through a hard time. He's dealing with Laban. Esau's on his tail. And he's right now, he's just going through it. So we're going to read verse 9 real quick, and then we're going to build from there. And Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, the Lord or Yahweh, which says unto me, return unto thy country and to thy kindred, and I will deal with thee. Now, the point I want to make here is this. Notice that Jacob is praying to the Most High. and he said, the God or the Elohim of my father Abraham and the God of my father Isaac. Now, why would Jacob mention his fathers? Anybody would like to expound?
That's a great question. Where did you start from reading? Because I literally got up just to get my book, and I missed some of the things that you said, so I definitely also missed where you started from. I know you're in Genesis 32, but where did you start?
At verse 9, brother.
Verse 9. Okay, where he said, and Esau, okay, and then Jacob said, the God of my father Abraham and the God of my father Isaac. Okay, well, I would first and foremost start off by saying that from the point of view of tribal and cultural upbringing, the first contact you have with any higher thought when it comes to spirituality, or i.e. the Creator, is that which your parents introduced you to. So many people in antiquity spoke of the power or the God of their fathers, as opposed to just speaking of the Creator in a more general sense, because clearly by this time we had so many different ways of worship. By the time that we're speaking of right now in Scripture, we know that idolatry was rampant in the earth during this era, as we can see replete throughout the Scriptures. So it's very, very important not to assume that everyone is serving the same God. Therefore, again, many tribal communities or groups of people spoke of the power or the God of their ancestors, but namely, you would introduce that of your fathers, because this is your parents are supposed to be your introduction to godliness, as we know, right? Like even going to the very word for father in Hebrew is Abba, right? And we know that the letters in Abba is Aleph and Beit. A lot of people know that Aleph literally is an ox head in pictorial Hebrew, and people who study a little further also know that it's the initial letter in the word El or Al for God. But a lot of people don't know that the word Aleph actually literally means to teach. For instance, in the book of Job, when Job is being questioned by his friend Elihu, who happens to be the youngest among them, remember Elihu opens up his discourse and he says to Job in a spirit of humility, but yet stern, he said, listen to my voice and I shall teach you wisdom. The word for teach you in that verse is Alephka, and the root is Aleph. So Aleph literally means to teach. So the next letter in father is Beit, which means literally a house or academy. So what does the first two letters, or what does the letters in the word Abba teach us about what a father is supposed to be? A father is supposed to be the teacher of his house. So again, when people spoke of their connection to the Creator, they always spoke first about those who introduced it, which in this sense, coming from the Hebraic way of thought, it would be your fathers.
Man, thank you, Brother LEXX. Praise the Most High for your wisdom and your knowledge. That is some good information, my brother. Brother Anonymous, you want to expound, or anything you would like to share real quick?
It's not much to really add to that. Brother LEXX broke that down amazingly. Just to land back a little bit, I mean, if we understand, like he said, the letters for what we would say God is El, he explained it perfectly in terms of what a father is supposed to be. Because if we are really operating in Torah, we know that our teacher is the Father, and he has given us his rules, his laws, his statutes, and his commandments. And the beauty of it, especially if we understand Devarim, like I think it's Devarim chapter 11, Deuteronomy 11, verse 1, I want to say, when we're taught to teach these things to our children, everything we know we're taught to teach to our children, and you see that being acted out in our forefathers. Abram taught it to Isaac, Isaac taught it to Jacob, and because he taught it to Jacob, we got our name, we got our nation. It is in this chapter, I believe, and yes, in Genesis 32, where his name is then changed to Yisrael, because things that he was taught because of Abraham. So he hit it right on the head. This is a thing about teaching. That's why we know if we teach and continue to teach, the goodness and the mercies and the blessings will follow generation after generation. So I think he hit it right out the park.
If I may jump on just to add to that point that I made, as I'm sitting here listening to you expound more thoughts are coming to me that I feel compelled to share. So, if a father is the teacher of his house, we then have to ask the question, what makes you a son? That might sound a little crazy, but I want to expound on what I mean. We know that the Creator told Abraham that Isaac is his only son. He said this while Ishmael, who's actually the firstborn, was still alive. Why did the Creator refer to? Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to stir it up a little bit. Why did the Creator?
Good. This is hot. Yeah.
So the question that comes to my mind in trying to expound upon this idea is, what makes or what defines someone as a son? Now that we know what a father is, if the father is the teacher of the house, then what is the definition of a son? Well, the Hebrew word beit again means house, and it's the initial letter in the Hebrew word for bain, which is the Hebrew word for son, or some of our Hebrew brothers might say ban. Nonetheless, we know we're still talking about the son in Hebrew. So the first letter is beit. The last letter is nun, or some of our other brothers may say nan. And the letter nun literally means like the highest point of the day. So we know in English thought, 12 p.m. is called noon because that's the time that the sun is the brightest. And we know that the Hebrew letter nun, aside from having characteristics of a fish in pictorial Hebrew, the literal meaning of noon is to brighten or to enlighten. So you cannot call yourself a son or said to be acknowledged as coming from your father unless you're what? The letter beit means house or academy, and noon means light or enlightened. So if you are not in sync with the teachings of your parents, you're not even considered a child of your parents. Hence why the Creator said to Father Abraham in Genesis chapter 22, take thy son, thine only son Isaac, and offer him up, even while Ishmael was alive, because the Creator already knew, as someone who sees the past, the present, and the future as one reality, that there was going to come a time that even Ishmael was going to stray from the teachings of his father, but he knew Isaac would not. Therefore, the Creator was right on point, as he is always, when he called Isaac his only son, because a son is he who follows the teachings or expounds upon the teachings of his parents. By extension, Malachi chapter 2, verse 10 says, have we all not one Father? Rhetorical question. Has not one God created us? Then why do we act so treacherously, each man profaning the covenant of his fathers? He's driving home the very same point that I'm trying to establish. If we all have one Father, and we all know only one God created us, then why aren't you following his teachings? Because, again, the definition of a father is that he's empowering you with spirituality. He's empowering you with wisdom. He's teaching you. And a child is supposed to take those teachings and act in accordance with them. So you can't even be called a child of God if you're not following the Creator's teachings. That's why we as Israel have a righteous pride when we say that we are the sons and daughters of Abraham, and we are the firstborn son of the Creator, as he said in Exodus chapter 4, verse 22, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. Why do we have that divine right to say in such an honorable way that we are the firstborn or the elect of the Creator? Because we actually follow his teachings. Out of all the families of the earth, we're the ones who follow his teachings.
Powerful, brother. And, man, that's some powerful words that you brought out, Brother Lex. And then just to land back off what you were saying as well, when Jacob is saying, like you just said, and to expound on what you already said, is that when Jacob, the God of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, he's remembering the teachings. So now all of a sudden, it's important for us to go back and see the actions of Abraham, because in order for Jacob to know or to call out to this God or the supreme intellect known as Yahweh or whichever we prefer to call him, he had to remember the actions or the conduct of his grandfather Abraham or his father Isaac or either or. So it's very evident that when he said God of my fathers, he's going off the memory and the concept or the teachings that he understood what he received from them, which stands out very well. So let's go to Genesis chapter 12, brothers. And we're going to pick it up at verse 1. And Yahweh had said unto Abraham, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make thee a great nation. I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. Now, the thing is here, I went here is because the Most High is talking to Abraham, and we understand at this point that Abraham and him they're communicating. And the Most High wants Abraham to leave his father's house for a reason. And the reason being, I mean, historically we know that there was some idolatry going on at this time as well, which Brother Zion expounded on a little earlier. So, and the Most High is really communicating with Abraham because there's something that he sees. So, and like the Most High says, my ways are your ways, my ways are not your ways, and my thoughts are not your thoughts. So whatever it is that the Most High saw in Abraham, he was worthy enough for the Most High to speak to him. Now, with that being said, he's telling him to leave his father's house because obviously there were some things that were going to hinder this relationship that the Most High wants to build with Abraham. He's telling him to leave your father's house. In verse 2, I'll read again. And I will make thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. So if you leave your father's house, for that reason, I'm going to make a great nation out of thee, and I will bless thee and make thy name great. Not just your literal name, but your reputation, because we know the Hebrew word for name is Shem, and it doesn't just necessarily mean your literal name. Also, yeah, your name is going to be great, but you're going to be a reputable person on all the earth. People are going to know you, not just by your name, but by your character, your conduct. And the thing about that is that when it's the saying we say, oh, the brother making a name for himself. That don't mean that he was going around telling people his name all day. No, it was the way that he conducted himself. It's the way that a person acts. So as you can see, the Most High is stressing to Abraham. He's telling him, if you follow me, leave your father's house and follow me and conduct yourself, I will bless thee. And what I'm going to do, let's move on to Genesis chapter 17. I just want to expound these two scriptures real quick, and then we'll hear everybody else's comments.
That was very powerful, by the way, may I add. I definitely was digging that.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Praise the Most High. And what we're going to do, we're going to go to Genesis chapter 17. And we're going to pick it up at verse 1. We may do a little bit of reading, but we may not have to because I see something, but we're going to go and we're going to build. And when Abram was 99 years old and 9, Yahweh appeared to Abraham and said unto him, I am the Almighty God, or the Almighty Elohim. Walk before me and be thou perfect. Now, that's powerful. I want to look at the Hebrew word walk. And according to the concordance, the word in the number is 1980 in the Hebrew section. And Brother Lex, if you don't mind, if I butcher the pronunciation, I'm pretty sure you'll back me up on that one. It's halak, if I'm pronouncing that right, brother?
Absolutely, perfectly.
Okay, so this is translated to walk in the King James, and what we see here is that the Most High is telling him to walk. Now, we understand this is a spiritual being. He's not literally telling Abraham to just take a few steps. So we're going to look at the word halak in concordance. I also have a Briggs drivers, a Brown's drivers and Briggs lexicon as well to back me up. But but it says in the lexicon, it says, the concordance rather, to go, to walk. But the root word is 32:12, and I'm going to go to that real quick. 32:12. Forgive me, brothers, I wasn't there.
Bring it out. Bring it out. Bring it out. Bring it out.
Most definitely.
I got time right now. Bring it out.
All right, for sure, brother. And the word is yalak, the root word. It means to walk, to literally or figuratively, to carry, come, depart, away, again, flow, grow, let down, march, prosper, pursue, cause to run, spread, take. And we understand that it's deeper than that, because this is the Most High, this is a spiritual being. He's not bound to telling you to literally do something. When he tells you something, when he teaches, he's telling you it's about your actions overall as a human being. Notice how I said that word human being, because our people, besides the propaganda online, we're not considered to be human beings, because we tend to say that we're the children of Israel.
Right.
Which is a shame. It's a shame that it has to come down to that. But Brother Lex, what's your knowledge in the Hebraic language and the Hebraic thought? Is there some other? Is there a deeper understanding of the word yalak or the word halak, if you don't mind?
Absolutely. Well, I would want to say that we find that the Torah employs language to anthropomorphize the abstract nature of the Creator. The Creator is an incorporeal being. He has no shape. He has no form. He has no limitations. None of your imaginations can actually grasp his essence. Hence why I always say, to the Creator's merit, what a wise entity he truly is, because when we name something, we're defining it, right? And by the word define, we're literally saying we're placing a barrier or a limitation, because anything that you can define, you've just placed a limitation on it. So the Creator is without definition, so how do you name him? Think about that for a moment. The Creator is without definition because he has no limitations. So how do you name him? Because the name is supposed to define the essence of the thing it's speaking of. So what does the Creator do? He takes the Hebrew noun haya, which means to exist, and he perfectly points you towards the most abstract part of his being with this one noun in its three verb tenses, which is haya, he was, howe, he is, and yiye, he shall be. So three verb tenses make up the name of the Creator. He was, who is, who shall be, or haya, howe, yiye. What's so powerful about that, as I'm going to connect it now to halak, is that we know for a fact that the very walk that the Torah is speaking of, the euphemism, the language, this, and I'm very long-winded, by the way, so I'm going to stop myself when I catch myself. The very language that the Torah is using to describe halak, it's actually making it synonymous with following the teachings, or i.e. the law, or i.e. the Torah of the Creator. Hence why in modern Hebrew, the very word for law is halakha. If you go among the Ashkenazim or the Sephardim, the Mizrahi, which is like the Middle Eastern, European fake ones, y'all already know I bang on them just as hard. When you go around them and you speak of Torah, they understand what you mean, but they more so refer to it as halakha, because they perfectly understand that when the Creator says, walk before me and be thou perfect, he's not literally saying, get in front of me and walk. First of all, he surrounds you. So it's impossible for you to get in front of the Creator. So what is he trying to tell you? He's trying to tell you to do as I do. Walk before me, or walk as me. Follow my walk. Remember, the name of the game is emulation. That's the whole concept of righteousness, which, according to Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 25, is the very definition of wisdom, right? Remember when we were given the law, moments later, Moses declares, and this shall be righteousness for you if you keep all these laws. So we look at this word righteous, which is zedek, And the first part, the root is Zedah, which is the Zadeh and the Dalet. Zadeh Dalet comes together to spell the Hebrew word Zedah, which literally means a hunter. It means to hunt, or it means to pursue. The last letter is the letter Kof, which literally is the way you say monkey in Hebrew, Kof, or some people say Kuf. Now, why did the Hebrew text or the Hebrew language use this term Kuf for monkey? What does a monkey do? A monkey tries to emulate the actions of man. So anybody who studies our animal behavior, zoology, you'll notice that out of all of the animals in the animal kingdom, it is the monkey, it is the ape that tries its best to mimic and emulate man. Hence, the word for holiness in Hebrew has kuf as its initial, because the idea of holiness is that we emulate the ways of the Creator. So when the Creator says, walk before me, he's literally saying, do as I do, or do as I would do. So again, the whole point of halak is that we are following a path that leads towards the Creator by doing things that emulate the very truths that he gives us. So the Torah is literally teaching us how to be godly, how to be godlike, how to be divine. And that divine behavior creates what's called holiness. It'll separate us from everything in the universe. Forget just about the earth, everything in the universe. So this term halak, which is the root that we're talking about, is much deeper than taking footsteps and walking. We're actually talking about emulating the very divinity of the eternal one of the universe.
Man, powerful words, man. We appreciate your knowledge, brother LEXX. Anonymous, my brother, any points or anything that stood out to you so far?
You know, sometimes it's just good to sit back and be a fly on the wall, you know what I mean? So I've been sitting back here just soaking it up. There's a couple of points I just wanted to just add to, because the brother is really expounding as to what this means. Remember, we're talking about how to properly be an Israelite. And so you brought up some things in chapter 12. And for me, chapter 12 goes back to chapter 11. And I'm just going to tell you from a father perspective, someone who has children. When my children get older, right, and one of my children just acts up, I'm going to separate that child away from my younger child, right? Especially when Brother Zion was talking about Isaac and Ishmael. Even though Ishmael was the older, the promise was to Isaac, because the Creator in his divine wisdom knew who was going to emulate, to use Brother Zion's word. We know in Genesis 11 that the tribes were scattered, right? Everything got scattered. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the first thing you see, even in Genesis 11, like if we go to chapter 11, I think it's verse 9 or 10. I'm sorry, no, it would be verse 7, somewhere 7 or 8. This is after he confounded the language. And then we immediately start going into the generations of Shem. Right there, that's a significance, because now we go from Shem, and then chapter 12 we go into when Abram is called. That's because he's the son that the Most High knew was going to follow or emulate what he was teaching, right? And then that's why when we get to chapter 15, we see that it was counted to him for righteousness, because he believed. That word believe is much more than just I mentally comply. But if you believe something, your actions will show it. And I believe that that's what this nation is supposed to start working to if we're talking about really coming to Torah. Our actions must show it. We talk a lot as a nation, but we have to start showing it, like our forefather did. Like, and it's essential to understand something like that in terms of when the nations were split up. When he confounded them, it's because they decided that they were going to do some craziness, and he confounded everything. So if you read the Table of Nations in chapter 10, it's almost like a precursor, because in Genesis 11 we see that everything was of one language. So then in Genesis 10, now we see the nations are scattered or now separated, and we get an idea of where Abraham comes from. That's because the writer is showing you where he comes from. So in Genesis 12, you already know who the Most High chose. He chose our lineage for a purpose, and our purpose is to emulate the rules, the teachings of Torah. And that's the only way that we get out of this captivity. I yield.
That's right. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
I love that word.
Praise the Most High.
Oh, go ahead, brother.
Oh, did you want to say something else, Brother Lex?
I wanted to touch on his word belief. That word belief in Hebrew is emunah, to believe, emunah. But it also carries the connotation of trusting. And the root of emunah is aman, which is aleph mem nun, aman, which is a pillar. A pillar is like is what like we would almost also call, and I can't even say almost. The word aman is used as a foundation stone several places in the Torah to describe literally a foundation stone, a pillar. Hence, we know that Father Yaakov was said to have erected a stone pillar upon which he laid his head. That stone pillar provided a foundation for his head to rest upon. What I'm trying to get at is, in the intellectual pseudo communities, they frown upon belief. Even now in the age of social media, I came across a meme this morning that says we are no longer in the age of believing, we're in the age of knowing. I want to say this and make this very, very clear. Believing in God, believing in the Torah is more powerful than what you think you know. The Torah says through the book of Proverbs, through the mouth of King Solomon, a wise man changes every day. And we're talking about his thoughts, his mind, what he knows. What you knew yesterday, tomorrow you may find out is wrong. What we know right now, tomorrow we may find out is wrong. But we will never go wrong when we trust and believe in the word of the Creator. Hence why the word for believe in Hebrew, emunah, is also the root word for pillar. Once you stand in that space where you believe in the word of God, you are literally immovable. And I just wanted to expound upon that point because I love to hear us as Israelites make it clear that we don't run from belief. Belief is what makes miracles possible. Belief is at the core of creativity. Belief begins with an idea that may not have solidity to it, may not have fruition to it, but it begins with an idea. And when you think of every major invention that's major, most people thought you was crazy until you actually did it. But it took you believing in yourself and believing in the truths and the formulas behind that invention for you to then follow it out and manifest it and bring it into fruition. So make no mistake about it. Belief is a very powerful thing.
Brother B.A., let me add to this, please. Because Brother Zion had brought up a very important point about the people outside of our community. And this is why it's important for our community to take the lead of brothers like Divine, Brother Zion, even a brother like Nasi Yushaville, who has showed us how we can take this Torah and really understand it on deeper levels. So one of the things that I study is this thing called epigenetics. I don't know how many people study that. It's a fairly new science. But if you study and understand what epigenetics explains, it's talking about the changes in organisms basically caused by the modification of gene expression. Now, it's not altering the genetic code itself, but it changes how your genes express themselves. Now, I'm going somewhere with this. He was just talking about belief. If we understand the way that the cells operate in your body, the way that the cellular makeup is, if you believe something, you're going to introduce it into your everyday regimen, i.e., if I know that I'm thirsty, I drink water, I will introduce it into my everyday regimen because it will quench my thirst. Maybe you see where I'm going with this. If we know that Torah is truly given to us from the Creator, we will introduce those laws and those lessons into our life. Something as simple as not eating pork or not eating these nasty, roach, shellfish. If you don't understand that these are bottom feeders and the things that they eat are breaking down your cellular makeup, which in turn gives you all of this high cholesterol, all of these things like diabetes, all of this nastiness that goes into our body and gives us these crazy diseases. It's something as simple as not eating those foods, right? All of this stuff you find in Torah. Now, I can show you how the flawed science says that the brain is in the nucleus of the cell. That's not true. The cell is just the CPU. The brain is in your senses, right? So me and Brother B.A. were building on this a few nights ago. If you get pinched, your brain then feels the pinch and sends the receptors back and forth from your nerve endings. It's the same thing with your cell. The more that you change your beliefs, your thoughts, these actions, now all of a sudden you don't only just live longer, but you are wiser. You become wiser. You become a stronger pillar in your community. This is what the science, so quote unquote, of belief really boils down to. And this is how you can use Torah not only to help your community, but to literally start to change your own genetic expressions, the expressions of the genes. This is why what Dr. Sebi was doing was so revolutionary. So I'll yield because I don't want to go too far in it, but don't just don't ever think in our community that we should just discount belief as something that is just simple. That that is a trick and a tool straight from nowhere. And so thank you for bringing that out, Brother Zion. I'll yield.
That's right. By example, to end my thought on this point, by example, I'll use Father Abraham. Father Abraham, going back to Genesis 22, was told to sacrifice his only son, even Isaac. And one thing that Father Abraham knows up until this point is that the Creator does not call for human sacrifice. We know that all sacrifices have been through animals up until this point. So this was a challenge to Father Abraham. This challenged what Father Abraham knew about the Creator. If Father Abraham knew that the Creator doesn't deal with human sacrifice as the other nations did, we had a sacrificial system that consisted of animal offerings. Other nations would sacrifice their children in the namesake of their deities, lowercase gods. The Creator of heaven and earth did not do so with the nation of Israel. Hence, a Father Abraham faced a dilemma. Do I go on what I know, or do I trust God? In line with the idea that this was also Abraham's 10th and final test. When you go through Genesis 12, by the time you get to Genesis 22, you know Abraham had 10 trials, or 10 tests. This is his 10th and final test. And this test was the most important and the hardest one of all, because this is the test that will allow us as Hebrew Israelites to withstand anything that comes before us in life. At some point in your life, you're going to be faced with a dichotomy of which road to follow, that which what I know or that which I trust that the Creator revealed is right. And this is that road that Abraham reached. Abraham knew the Torah does not call for human sacrifice. He knew that beyond a shadow of a doubt. Abraham, in his mind, as he's walking with his son that he know he got to sacrifice, has to be saying to himself, what am I doing? What am I about to do? But you notice the Torah don't say that Abraham stopped. It don't say that he delayed. Abraham kept it moving literally and put the knife to the young man's neck and was getting ready to divorce him from life. And the Creator said, Abraham, touch not the lad. And the Torah says that he provided a ram in its place, right? So what was the lesson learned here? What was the most powerful thing learned here? Your belief in the Creator is the most powerful thing that you can have, because many of us who come to knowledge of the Creator, as we converse among one another as brothers and sisters and we build in wisdom, sometimes understanding that comes from us building will reveal that many things we thought we knew were wrong. So never give all of your confidence and trust to what you believe or think you know. What you know can always be revealed to be wrong at some point. That's a fact. But if you follow what the Creator said, you will never be wrong. And that was his highest test.
Man, thank you, Brother Lex. And for those who are listening, if we would like to call in and ask questions and build I'm getting all tongue tied. If you like to call in and build with this and bring in some information, the number is 319-527-6239. Again, 319-527-6239. 39. If you would like to email your questions or comments or observations, you can email us at debatetalkforyou@gmail.com. Again, debatetalkforyou@gmail.com. And just to expound on what the brothers was bringing out, because we're in Genesis 17. Now, what I would like to do, I'm not just bound to the King James Version. I also read from the Greek Septuagint. So I'm going to read Genesis chapter 17, and I'm going to read verse 1 from here, because from what the brothers been building on so far, it sounds like, or what it is that it's the actions of Abraham. Mm-hmm. Now check this out. Let me just read real quick. Genesis 17, chapter 17, verse 1 from the Greek Septuagint, and it reads, "And Abraham was 99 years old, and Yahweh appeared to Abraham and said to him, I am thy God, and be well-pleasing before me, and be blameless." Now the King James said to walk, and we understand the Hebrew term halak, but in the Septuagint it says to be well-pleasing. So in other words, we see the connection. We see that it is about Abraham's actions. It is his action. It is the way he's conducting himself. This is what we understand for Jacob to understand as a child growing up and watching his fathers, hearing the stories of what Abraham did, the teachings of his father Isaac. He understands, Jacob understands this God that he is dealing with, or this supreme intellect. He understands that this God is a God of action. And the teachings of the Most High, which we call Torah, is that not an action?
That's right.
Torah is an action. So now all of a sudden, for people who tell us we don't have to keep the Torah, you're telling us that we don't have to conduct ourselves according to how the Most High called it. For those people who tell us that we have no connection to the culture of being an Israelite, you're telling us that to be an Israelite, no, that's done away with, don't worry about that, the Most High done away with Israel. No, he didn't. To be an Israelite is an action.
That's right.
That's what it's all about.
That's right. That's right.
So for those who hate the name of Israel and hate the fact that our people call ourselves Israel, not only are you speaking against us, you are speaking against the supreme intellect known as Yahweh.
That's right.
And so what we're going to do is go deeper. Let's build some more. And then we're going to check out the callers after this next segment, the next session. So let me see. Excuse me, brothers, for give me a quick second. Let's turn to Genesis chapter 18. Let's go a chapter over.
All right.
We're going to continue to build, and we're going to pick it up at Genesis chapter 18. Is one of my favorite chapters. We're going to pick it up at verse 17. Genesis chapter 18, verse 17. And Yahweh, and I'm reading from the King James, and Yahweh said, shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? Now we understand that at this point, this is the Sodom and Gomorrah. We don't have to go into the specifics of that because we all know the story. Verse 18. Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great nation. The Most High said he's going to surely become a great nation because Abraham is just. Let's just keep going. I don't want to get off. Verse 18. Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I know him, that he will command his children and keep his household after him, and they shall keep. We also know that means to protect. The way, the Hebrew word is direct. I think it's direct. The way of Yahweh to do justice and judgment, that Yahweh may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him.
That's right.
Now let's go back to verse 19 one more time, because there's a word right there. For I know him. And the word is Yadah. That means to perceive, to see. According to Hebraic thought, that when we say know according to the Hebraic thought, there is an intimate relationship between Abraham and the Most High Yahweh, the intellectual force known as Yahweh. There is an intimate connection. The Most High say, for I know him, that he will command his children to keep his household after him. So why is it that Jacob called out to the God of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac? Because he remembers the foundation that his fathers, that what they carried out and how they acted. He understood. And the Most High said, right here in Genesis 18, he said, for I know Abraham. He going to teach his children to keep my way.
That's right.
So when you are kicking against the Torah, see, this is the issue I have with the Christian doctrine. This is the issue I have with it. We can read Torah in Genesis chapter 1. Right there. You see Adam and Eve? They're right there. The Most High is instructing them on how to conduct themselves in the Garden of Eden. He's teaching them. Torah is not bound to just Moses. Torah didn't start with the commandments that he gave to Moses. Torah is eternal because it came from an eternal force known as Yahweh. Torah is not open for debate. It is not open to go back and forth and argue over. Torah is not anything that is hard to keep. For those who are going around teaching that, you are a lie and the truth is not in you. Torah is an action. So when you speak against Torah, you are speaking against the Most High God that you claim to serve. And I stand on that. And brothers, what we're going to do, I'm going to allow the brothers to expound real quick, and we're going to check out the callers. So, brothers, Brother Lex, you can go right ahead if there's anything you would like to point out.
Okay. Well, you said a handful. I was more than associated with what you said. I mean, it's a beautiful thing when you have so many diverse thoughts from our community under one room. I never get so hung up on my years in and how much I may have accumulated that I don't give ear. One of the keys to me being a brother that can get up and stand firm in this truth and proclaim it is that I'm first an amazing listener. I listen to everybody. On the level of wisdom, all of us are equal. Wisdom is about undifferentiation. Understanding is where differentiation comes in place, because in order for your mind to take in a concept and discern it, it involves it putting into categories, or i.e. differentiating it. Wisdom represents undifferentiated thought. So our sages say, who is wise? And the answer is, he who learns from all men. So you have to open your ears when someone speaks, no matter who it is, no matter where you at, because there's a message there for you brought by the Almighty God himself. Even if it's to understand that the person speaking is a fool, that's still a message for you. It's still knowledge for you. I want to touch on that word, yada, which the root would be da'ah, as sometimes we see it as da'at, which is the Hebrew word for knowledge. We know that what we're calling knowledge, even in English, before I even get to the Hebrew, is not in sync with what it means even in the English. The word knowledge is actually a compound word. The first part is know. The last part is the Latin word or the German word LEXX. In German it would be ledge, but in Latin it would be LEXX. The first part is self-explanatory, know. Know means to inquire information, internalize it, right? Period. The last part, LEXX or ledge, means to act upon. Very, very, very important. I'll say that one more time. The word knowledge is actually a compound word. The first part, know, is self-explanatory. It means to acquire information and internalize it. The second part, LEXX or ledge, means to act upon. So we can't call someone knowledgeable if they're not acting on what they know. Very, very important point. We a lot of us, when we meet great speakers and great teachers and mores in the community, we say, wow, that brother's very knowledgeable. I refrain from saying that because we don't follow him day and night to know if he's truly acting upon what he knows. This is why the wisdom of Torah is so important, and this is also why coming back to our very own language is so important, because we would even understand it without English, just looking at the Hebrew word da'ah, yada, or da'at. The first place it is used ever in the entire book is in the book of Genesis, where it says that, and Adam knew his wife. That word is right there, yada'ah. Why does it use the word for knowledge, for knowing? It's talking about sexual intercourse, and it's using the Hebrew word da'ah, which means, like in English it would be knowledge. What is the concept being conveyed there? Well, there's two concepts being conveyed there. The first concept may not be as readily accessible, so I'll bring that out real quick. The person that you choose to be intimate with should be a person that you establish some wisdom and some understanding with first. Wisdom and understanding should be the basis of all relationships. Hence why the very first sexually intimate relationship ever described in the Torah is described with this word da'at, because wisdom and understanding should be the base of all relationships, especially a sexually intimate one. So before Adam and Eve came together in body, they first came together in mind and spirit. Very, very important. The second part is that da'at literally represents the confluence between wisdom and understanding, or literally entering into, or if it was English, acting upon. So it's the same concept even when you understand it from Hebrew. Knowledge literally means to act upon what someone knows. So again, we have a lot of people that are in the know, but we have very few people that we can actually call knowledgeable, because if you was to take a camera and follow these people 7 days through the week, you would see that a lot of people are not acting upon what they know.
Thank you, brother. We appreciate that. Brother Anonymous, you want to expound real quick before we go to the callers?
I just want to say a word, and if Brother Zion wants to come back and touch on this, because he is so polished on explaining the Hebrew. When we dealing or attacking this word command, you spoke on this because you said the Most High knew that Abram would he would also command his household or command his children. That's the tzava. And if we understand what that means, it really means to give out the orders. And it wasn't just to command his ben or his children, but to also command his bayit, his household. And if you understand Hebrew grammar, and I don't want to go too far in a grammatical lesson, but the way tzava is used, it's a PL imperfect stem, which means it's something that you're supposed to keep doing. It's not just I'm doing it once. And the point that I'm getting at is this is not just a one-time thing. Oh, I told you Torah. Oh, I showed it to you. It is something, and Brother Zion touched on it, we live it every day, day in and day out. Command is not just about I'm saying it, but it is literally about showing it. If you look at this, if we know that we are truly at war, if you look at this from a military standpoint, the best leaders are not just the guys who are out barking orders, but they're actually out in the trenches with their soldiers. That's what a true leader of a household is. He's showing his wife, his children, everyone, every day, how to properly lead the household. And if Brother Zion can quickly touch on Savah, that Sadeh and that Wav and that Hey, that would be great.
Okay. First of all, I want to say again, the direction of this conversation is just simply amazing, because not only are you honing in on truths that many of us need to be edified on, but it's giving us a very penetrating and piercing insight into the aspect and depth of Hebrew syntax and grammar. I'm glad that you brought up that when we talk about ziwa, we're talking about the PL construct, which we know is a continuous action. For instance, the literal root ziwa, which is zade wav he, literally means to bind or attach. So when it's introduced in the PL stem, which is a continuous action, we know that the moment you separate yourself from something, or the moment you let go of something, you're no longer bound or attached to it, and you're also not continuing the action. To get a steady grip on something is to be in concert with repetition. to let go is to lose that bond or that attachment. What's so powerful about this concept is that it's interrelated to all of the concepts that talk about the highest levels of spiritual proximity to the Creator, because that is the very goal of creation. Very, very few times do we talk about what is the goal of it all. Why was this thing created? Why was the universe brought into existence? What is the goal of it all? Well, let's examine some of the words, and the one I want to focus on is the one you brought up. Ziwa literally means to bind or attach. So the word for commandment, which would be mitzvah or mitzvah, is literally based on the Hebrew word ziwa, which means to bind or attach. Then you have the word, and I lost it. It'll come back to me. The word for prayer is tefillah, and we know that the first part is palal, which means to judge, because every time you pray, you're actually judging yourself, unless you're hearing the voice of the Creator answering you. So every time we come before the Creator in prayer, which is so powerful to do, is that we are judging ourselves. So we have 3 times a day as Israelites that we normally commune with the Creator, that we come before Him in prayer. If we train ourselves to commune with the Creator on this level, what we're actually doing is we're training ourselves to be morally in sync with His legal code, His divine legal code, because each time you pray, you are literally judging yourself, right? You're coming before the Creator and you're either extolling Him, you're praising Him, shedding light on Him, or you're speaking of your own shortcomings and asking for forgiveness. So every time we come before the Creator, we are judging ourselves. But there's another root related to tefillah, the Hebrew word for prayer, and it's actually the reverse. It's petil, and this root means to twist, literally to twist. The word petil means to twist. So the word ziwa means to bind or attach. The word for prayer, one of the roots for prayer is petil, which means to twist. And then we speak about this Hebrew word for offerings, which is korev in Hebrew. Korev is how we say offerings in Hebrew, but it's based on the Hebrew root karav, kuf resh beit karav, which means to draw near. So let's assess all 3 meanings. The word for commandment means to bind or attach. The word for prayer means to twist, and the word for offering means to draw near. All 3 of these words are talking about 3 concepts of drawing closer to the Creator. This is all about our proximity, spiritually speaking, to the Creator. With each command that we keep, we are binding ourselves to the Creator. So the goal of creation, when we examine all of the highest modes of proximity, is that the goal of creation is that man and God literally become one, where you bind yourself to the Creator, literally speaking, which sounds crazy because you say, okay, I thought you said the Creator is incorporeal. How does one bind himself to the Creator if the Creator is incorporeal? Well, the very first thing we must always remember is that the thing which is actually you is that ruach that dwells within you. Because we know that this flesh one day will be made as grass. But this ruach is a rock cut from that great mountain, and one day it shall return to it. Hallelujah.
Man, that was powerful, brother. That was powerful. And just to expound real quick before we go to the callers, I think it's in Exodus 14. When the Most High was instructing the Israelites, He was telling them to draw near to the Most High. They were on their way out of captivity. And it's powerful that Zion had brought up, draw near means to give your offering, to draw near to Him, to offer yourself to the Most High, to allow Him to impose His will upon you, to listen to Him, to take heed to His sayings. This is the action of an Israelite. So being an Israelite also means it's an action. It's deeper than just being a nation of people, because the Most High called being Israel, or He called Jacob Israel. He called it into the existence. So when He defines it as, we have to line up and act upon how He called it, or to take heed to what He called it, rather. And with that being said, Sal, let's take it away. Let's go to the call. You guys mind going to the callers real quick?
Oh, absolutely. Could take them.
All right, most definitely. Okay, Sal, let's take it away. And for those who are not aware, we're having some minor technical difficulties. Sal's mic is not working, so for those callers, so you he'll buzz you in and you just speak. Let us know who you are and where you're from. Caller?
Hello?
Yes, caller. How you doing, sister?
Fine. I want to thank Sal for patching me in. This is Sister Doris, and I want to shout out to the Man Up segment. You know me, I'm really enjoying the segment, and especially, talking about Abraham. And now you guys read it, and it said that he was going to be the father of many nations, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, so I'm a believer, right? And and I love listening to the segment, and I love this debate talk for you. But it sometimes I feel like, I'm excluded. Because I choose to call myself a believer and I don't choose to call myself Israel. Does that mean that I don't love the Creator? Because when you say Christianity, I would like for you to please clarify when you say Christianity or Christians or whatever, because that's very broad. You know what I mean? Are you talking, say who you talking to. Are you talking to the Catholics? Are you talking to the Mormons? Who are you talking to? Because I read Genesis from Revelation. Now, I don't think that I should be penalized if I read the New Testament and it uses the language like the saints, the called out ones. Can I embrace that and still come into the fold?
Okay, Sister Doris, let me just make a clarification. I said Christianity. Thing is that Christianity has nothing. Christianity as we know it today, to the secular view of Christianity, I should have been a little bit more clearer. But my point is that being an Israelite is an action. It's not bound to just the nation of people. Being an Israelite is an action. Torah is an action. Now, when it comes to Christianity, and I should have been a little bit more clear, Christianity is a doctrine that I understand to be outside of the scriptures, and it's commonly taught in Christianity as a whole. Now, not all of Christendom may teach of these concepts of the Torah is done away with, but it is commonly known amongst various amounts of people that Christendom, it is taught that the law is done away with and we don't need to keep it. So, if you are a believer and you believe in the Most High, you also can be an Israelite, not just because of your nation or who your bloodline, who you're related to. It can also, you can be that because the spiritual being on the Yahweh, he called it that. So it's not just bound to Jacob, and we understand that because the Most High is not just bound to flesh. It's the spiritual being that called it into action. So you can be an Israelite if you would choose to be, but if you want to call yourself a believer, you can call yourself that too.
But that's what the New Testament calls us, right? Or it says the saints, or it says the elect. Can I use that language and still make it?
Yes, you can. And this is the thing. We're not. Today's topic is not about whether you're going to make it or not. We're just talking about the concept of what it means to be an Israelite. That's what we're talking about, Sister Doris.
Okay. Well, I want to be. That's what I'm saying. But we all said Abraham now, because he was a Hebrew.
Okay, that is true. But if you see that we're building a couple of scriptures, we're going to work our way, because in the beginning of the call, we established ourselves, our core in Genesis chapter 32. And then what we understand is that Jacob called out to the Most High, the God of his fathers. So what we're doing, we're building on his fathers first, and we're making the connection, as you can see, that the way that Abraham conducted himself, Isaac and Jacob had to do the same thing because they were taught as Abraham.
So we're the connection is that we're seeing that being an Israelite is much deeper, is not bound just to Jacob and the generations after him. This is a concept and prior to them. The Most High.
Oh, okay. I feel that. Yeah. Okay, but so said, it's an action. It's not a name. It's an action. Yeah. So if you take the word Israelite away and just go with what he say we supposed to do, because I just want to clarify at my church, and I've been attending church for a while now, since I was like 3 up until now, and we've always were taught the 10 Commandments. I was like, why they say that we say that the law is done away with? I have always been taught the 10 Commandments. Always.
And I have no issue with that. Me being raised as a Baptist, I was taught that the law can be kept, and I was taught it was done away with, and it was wicked, and it was evil. That's what I was taught growing up. So the thing is that, and I understand your point, Sister Doris. I'm not, you know me. I'm not here to argue with you. We're here to build.
Oh no.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. So
before our sister jumps off, could I address something really quick to her?
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
All right. How you doing, Sister Doris?
Fine.
All right. So I'm looking at the book of Romans. I'm looking at the 2nd chapter, and I'm looking at the 28th verse, because one thing I'm very good at is listening. And I'm listening to you making very valid statements and asking very, very real and valid questions. Is it quite possible, if I could rephrase what you're saying, it seems like what you're asking us, is it possible to be obedient to the Creator and still keep my name? Like, why I have to be called an Israelite? Why I got to be called a Jew? Why can't I just be an obedient believer of the omnipotent one of the universe? If I can surmise what you're saying, right?
That's right.
Okay. So in the book of Romans, which is in the New Testament, in the 2nd chapter, we're talking about the template for righteousness throughout the 2nd chapter. We're talking about what makes you righteous and what necessarily doesn't make you righteous. When we get to the 28th verse, Paul, who's speaking, he is condemning those who think that they have a tie or greater bond with the Creator simply because they have a blood connection and they are calling themselves Jews. So here is what he says, and then I'm going to tell you what I think about what he said. He says, "For he is not a Jew who is one outwardly, nor is circumcision that which is outward in the flesh. But he is a Jew who is one inwardly." Now, what I want to point to is this. Paul is the speaker here, and Paul is talking about from the first verse up until this verse. He's essentially defining the template for righteousness, what makes a person righteous and what doesn't necessarily make you righteous. And in this part, he's basically saying, you being a blood heir of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whose names were changed to Israel and, of course, the Jews, doesn't mean that you're righteous just because you're a Jew. Because a Jew is really one who is a Jew inwardly. The most important thing I hone into is that he never changed the name. All he did was say that to emulate the Creator inwardly is what makes you a Jew. But nonetheless, it still makes you a Jew, because the word Jew comes from the word Yehuda in Hebrew, or some people may say Yahawada, but I'll say Yehuda in this instance. And it comes from the Hebrew word Hodah, which means to praise. And this is the language of the Creator. Like, we have to remember that this sacred book that we all deem sacred, its language is Hebrew. Hebrew is what we call Sefat HaBariah, the language of creation, or also Sefat HaEmet, the language of truth. It's a very powerful language. It's the language that the Creator quite literally spoke the universe into existence with. So when the Creator says that we are Yehudim, we are Jews, he is literally saying we are the ones he created to praise his name, because the word Yehudim or Yehuda means to praise. And in the book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verse 21, it says that the entire nation of Israel were created to give him praise. So anyone who praises the Creator is called a Jew, and by extension would be considered an Israelite.
Well, I'm just saying, I practice, I just don't do the feast days and all of that, but I'm just saying, for the most part, we've always been taught the Ten Commandments, you know, and it's only one book, one Bible. I mean, you know, if I say I read the King James and then you come at me, I mean, because I'm not going to change not one word. I ain't going to change not one word.
Well, what we do as Israelites when we speak about the difference in translation is that I know you do know that when you go from an original language into a transliteration, or you're going to do what's called losing it in language. There's even movies. I can think of one particular movie that's called Lost in Translation. So many things become lost in translation when they go from the original to the transliteration. And I'll give you one example. When we think of the word love, most of us, we automatically say love is, emotions. Like if I was to ask you to be very brief and tell me what is your definition of love, what would you tell me?
The creator. I would say creator. I mean, because without him, I wouldn't exist.
Right. So how would you define love then? How would you express love?
Through his practicing his principles. You know what was written for me to do. Okay.
Very, very powerful. I'm glad you said that, because let's look at the word love literally in the Oxford Dictionary, because the word love is an English word. In the Oxford Dictionary, the word love is first and foremost, they tell you, an emotion. And we know that the word emotion is based on the word motion, meaning something that transits, something that changes. The word for love in Hebrew is ahava. And the first part is the letter aleph, which is the prefix, and it means the first person future. And the last part is the word hava, which means to give. So when we put the first person future as a prefix to the Hebrew verb to give, it means unconditional giving, or i.e., we're talking about a consistent action. We're not talking about emotions that change, like 1 minute I'm happy, 1 minute I'm sad, because from the English perspective, love is simply an emotion when we're talking about the English word love. But when we're going to this sacred language that we're talking about, Hebrew, we're honing in on what the Creator is talking about versus what later nations are developing in their own actions, in their own ways, and in their own thoughts. This is why Hebrew is so important, because even when we look at the word love, which is English, it's still based in the Hebrew word lev, because when you think of love as a body part, where would you say love has its origin in your anatomy? And we're talking about like the world. When people draw a symbol for love, what is it normally? Is it not a heart?
Yes.
Okay. The Hebrew word for heart is lev. Doesn't that sound like love? And the thing I'm trying to point you to is that we must understand that there is so much beauty, but more importantly, power in speaking this holy language. The land of Israel is called the Holy Land. And the native tongue of that land is Hebrew. That is the holy language. And what we're saying essentially is speaking these divine truths in the languages it was originally speaking is so much more powerful than speaking it in any other language. In the book of Ecclesiasticus, in the book of the Apocrypha, and in the first opening chapter, it tells you that speaking a thing and knowing it in the Hebrew is far more potent than knowing and speaking it in other languages. Hebrew is a powerful, powerful language. And when we understand that the basis of language is communication, and then we understand that the way that this whole thing of creation came to be is that the Creator spoke, and then things began to exist. His words created things. Words have power. How much more power than speaking it in the original tone and language that the Creator spoke it in, which is Hebrew. So again, when we say Yehuda or Yehudim, which would be Jews, or when we say Israel, my sister, I'm telling you with all love, there is so much power in that name. When you pray to the Creator in His name, using His name, you are unleashing forces. You are unleashing power. And that's what we have to come back to. And that's all our brothers say when we talk about translation. Not that we need to put other translations down or other cultures down, but we're emphasizing that this language that we deem as sacred must be approached again. We must come back to it.
Well, you appear to be a very learned person on this subject, and I agree with what you said wholeheartedly about, the universe being created. I understand that the language is rhythmic, is what it is.
Right, there you go. I love that even better.
And like you said, it's rhythmic. So, you know what I mean? And it's more important, like you said, to get in touch with him. And, you know what I mean? Like I said, please, I don't like labels. I'm just saying, I just want to, you know what I mean, do the creator and be done with it.
Right.
I want to be.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just going to say, we agree with you, Sister Doris. We understand your points. You know what I'm saying? It's just that the reason why that we put this concept together, or this show rather, is because amongst people who call themselves Israelites or those who come against them on both sides, there is a misconception of what it is to be an Israelite. So we figure if we just go into the root and get a better, deeper understanding of how the Most High called it, then we can most definitely get some results. And as you can see from so far, we're building, and not just what Zion LEXX said, you also brought some things out as well. So it's much deeper than just being called a label. Being called something is more so of an action. You know what I'm saying? So, but most definitely we do appreciate your words, Sister Doris. And
okay, but I just want to encourage the people. I mean, and I know you guys know for a fact that, it could be a translation and it could be a transliteration. But one thing you cannot do, you will not be able to change the root word. Never. But thank you guys, and I'm really enjoying the segment.
Oh, thank you, Sister Doris, and we appreciate you always calling in. We deeply appreciate
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
Shalom. All right, next caller.
Yeah, this is Brother Mercy. I just want to say, hey, brothers. I just wanted to say this is a good discussion. And one of my favorite books of the Bible, actually my favorite book of the Bible is Genesis. And I know you guys touched on Adam and Eve. And, he said it wasn't good for him to be alone. And alone, it means all one. All one. So we think about that. Alone is all in one or all one. So I just wanted to say it wasn't good for Adam to be all one. So that's why he separated Adam into Adam and Eve. I just wanted to say that, it's never good to be, with Adam, he had one brain, he had just two hands, one body. It's never good just to have your opinion all by itself. It's always good to have a consensus when you're doing things. It's never good to be all one opinion. And that's what's beautiful about beauty. The beauty thing about Torah. Torah is an accent word, but also it has a lot of freedom in it. That's why, the patriarchs, they learned through time. And I just wanted to say that, you don't find fringes in the Garden of Eden. You know what I'm saying? You don't find a Passover then. So they grew to that. And sometimes Hebrews forget that Torah is a growing law. It's not just a law, I got it now. No, you grow into it. That's why people today, when we try to do certain things, there's a whole lot of things missing because you didn't start from the beginning like they did. They started from the beginning. They started with Adam and Eve. First, what did Yahweh do? He made sure Adam had a wife, had a family. That's the first thing he established was the family. After you establish the family, then we get into these other things, beards and all this other stuff. But I just think Israel focuses on the minor, and they let the major stuff go. So I just wanted to say that, I'm part of the Messianic Judaism community. We believe Yeshua is the Messiah. But I just wanted to say that is the major thing in Torah. It started with marriage. So if you don't have that, you have very little. And, I just wanted to say that. And it wasn't a polygamous marriage. It was one man and one woman. So I just wanted to say that, a lot of times what we got today, we got a lot of mess. Brothers are saying they have a polygamous relationship, but really they got 3 and 4 baby mamas was really going on. Because in this country, you can legally only have one wife. You can only legally have one wife. So if you got more than one, you're breaking the law. So I just wanted to say, unless you go to another country. So I just wanted to say, you know, brothers need to stop pretending and just do what Torah says and just grow into it. And I just want to know what you guys think about that, and that's it.
Thank you, Brother Mercy. And I agree with every word you just said. And just and me personally, I'm glad you said about Torah something to grow into. And the thing is that you saying that stood out to me right there, because and this is where it always goes back to the argument of those who don't like the name of Israel or who hate the mission of Torah or which they understand to be law. It's deeper than just a bunch of do's and don'ts. Torah or the law is freedom in it. These are the teachings of the Most High God. It's not known as the law of Moses. It's beyond Moses. These are instructions that come from the eternal force, the immovable object known as Yah or Yahweh or Yahweh or the various titles you prefer to call him, or names rather. So when I understand the first 5 books, I look at it and I try to look at it from a much deeper perspective and try to look at it through the eyes of the actual writer of the text, not the translator. So, and with that being said, I'll let the other brothers expound real quick, and we'll move on to the next couple of scriptures and continue to build.
Go ahead, Brother Zion. Hello?
Hello? I had my phone on mute, sorry. There was so much said. The caller called in and made some good points, and the brother just made some excellent points. One of the points I immediately honed in on when he said that the Torah is freedom, I really, really took a liking to that point, because there's a portion in the book of Deuteronomy which speaks about the Torah itself being engraved, really like engraved, and the word was like karayot. And our sages say don't read it as karayot, but read it as kerut. Kerut literally means freedom, because it is the Torah that gives us spiritual freedom, or is the Torah that gives us spiritual liberation. Like, the goal of meditation is spiritual liberation. Hence why the Torah actually tells us that we should meditate in it day and night. The very goal of meditation is that the spirit becomes liberated through the act of physical, spiritual, and internal isolation. So we're talking about the Hebrew word baded. This is how we speak of meditation in the Torah, or being alone. The correct way, or the collegiate way of saying meditation in Hebrew is hit bodedut, based on the Hebrew verb boded, which means isolation or to be alone. So the Torah speaks about us having to what? Meditate in it day and night. And again, the goal of meditation is spiritual liberation, as we also saw the Torah itself, as our brother so eloquently said, gives us freedom. But what is it freeing? Is it freeing the body, or is it freeing the mind and the soul? And in this instance, we're talking about the latter. The Torah allows the mind and the soul to become liberated, so that it can do what? Bind and attach itself to the omnipotent one of the universe. So I'm just kind of sitting back and enjoying this segment of the conversation, because, again, I'm a really good listener, and I'm loving it so far.
All right, radio check. Just jumping in, making sure I'm good. Y'all can hear me? Sal Showtime.
Oh, yeah, we can hear you, Sal, most definitely.
All right. Just letting you know, we also have one more caller standing by whenever you're ready for that. But we appreciate the listening audience out there. I see a few Skype callers out there. Once again, if you have any questions or comments, you know that number, 319-527-6239. Is press number 1, and we'll add to the conversation. My mic is working again, so I'm back in. Go ahead, y'all.
Thank you, Brother Sal. And Anonymous, you want to expound real quick before you move on?
We can go to the next caller. I agree with Brother Zion as well as you. This is a great dialogue. This is very rarely am I at a loss for words, but this is a great dialogue. So let's get to the next caller.
All right, Sal, let's go to the next caller.
All right, let's go to the phone lines, family. Let's go to 916747. You're live.
Shalom, Sal. Debate talk for you. This is Sister Ashanti. Shalom, Anonymous. Shalom, BA. Shalom, Brother Zion LEXX. I have a question.
Shalom. Go ahead,
Shalom.
big sis. Do you think?
Questions for Zion LEXX. And I had this question already, but Sister Doris actually confirms why I have this question. Israel. We know Israel is one who strives with Elohim, contends or rules with. And when you read Romans chapter 2, Zion LEXX, that really spoke volumes. I see that a lot of people treat Israel as just a label or a category and not a characteristic or a personality trait that exhibits through an action or behavior or conduct. And you expounded on Jew, which comes from Yehuda, which means, come from the root Hoda, to praise. And I am one who studies the language, and I appreciate the language of the Hebrew. My question to you, Zion LEXX, is do you see a lot of people trying to differentiate themselves with these titles of, oh, I'm Israel, oh, I'm not a Jew, or I'm Israel, or I'm just a believer? Do you see most of that maybe because of certain representatives or so-called representatives of the Most High Yahweh? Just what's your take on that? I'm one for unity. I'm one for, coming together where we need to come together. I love to not major on the minors. So just those little things. Do you see a lot of divide because of maybe the representatives who are out here calling themselves certain things? Do you see people trying to stray away from actually taking pride in what the Most High Yahweh called them?
Okay, so let me say this. Thank you, sister, for calling in. Number one, I feel honored that you felt the need to address me and ask that question. Number two, make no mistake about it. I want to first start off by saying I've been very humble throughout this dialogue, and this is a side of me that very few people get to see. Most people that see me or hear me on other platforms where I tend to be a little bit more aggressive because I'm in intellectual combat mode, where I'm going against those who condemn the Bible. So I come across as aggressive, but people who really know me will tell you that's a very humble brother. So saying all that to say, even with my humility, I am no yes man. So when I'm about to tell you that I agree with you 100%, understand that I'm not yes man in you. I'm telling you, you are on point. Absolutely, I see people and so-called representatives in our community, and even those outside of our community, who are focusing more on Israel as a label, as a title, than in emulating the characteristic. Because when you understand the character behind the designation or the terminology of the name Israel or Yehuda, then you understand that there's a characteristic that's supposed to come with it, that is supposed to be synonymous with it. When you think of Israel, you're supposed to immediately think of righteousness. When you think of Yehuda, you're supposed to immediately think of righteousness. But there's a lot of people going around with these names who inwardly are not righteous, who inwardly don't have good deeds. But outwardly, they scream in Israel, they shout in Jews, but on the inside, it doesn't align. And one thing we must remember is that you could be the greatest magician to man all you want, but you will never fool God. And I think we tend to forget that. We tend to forget that the Creator is always watching. I could be tricked. I have been tricked, and I will be tricked again. But ain't none of us tricking God. So those leaders in the community, and even those who exist outside of our community, who continually beat and oppress people with this, this haughty attitude that I'm this and I'm that. Again, we're talking about labels, right? But they are not actually honing in on the main component, which is the characteristic. Because one thing I remember in reading books like Isaiah is in the latter chapters, I believe it's Isaiah 60 or 61, the Creator says, and additionally, I will also gather to the nation of Israel when I redeem them the Gentiles, and I will bring them in. And he said, I will make some of them greater than the sons and daughters that's born in the way. That's powerful. That's right in the book of Isaiah, either chapter 60 or 61, where the Creator is clearly telling us that there are Gentiles, people who are not Israelites, people who are not Jews, that are going to come to this knowledge and are going to be drawn and called out by the Creator more proximal to Him than those who think they have blood relation, simply because they carry the true characteristic, meaning they're actually acting upon what they know as opposed to just lip professing on corners throughout the world. So I'm glad you raised that question. It is something that I try to address when I have the opportunity to, so I am so glad that you raised that question. I'm also very, very moved to hear of your understanding of the language. And just by listening to you, I think I listen well. I can really tell you definitely understand it. And this is just, again, another iota of me trying to fully express that I'm really enjoying the direction of this dialogue. It seems with everybody calling in, we're just adding to the divine chain or the divine will that is being spoken in our ears tonight, because the Creator is constantly speaking to us, but He's using our brothers and sisters to do so. And it is up to us to get past our ego and listen to everybody. So thank you.
Thank you, Brother Zion. Praise God.
Man, some powerful words, Brother Zion. And I just have to say real quick, the sister Shanti, the sister who was just called in and spoke with you, brother. She's a close, near and dear person to me. We're very close, and I call her my Hebrew expert because she is very fluent in the language as well, and I've learned a lot from her. And one thing about it, me personally, I would say this, and I've stressed this before on this platform, is that we don't have an issue with sisters speaking, and we don't have a phobia of sisters teaching. So that's my sister, and I appreciate it, and I love her to death, and I have learned from her. There was a time where I had said publicly that I have no issue with learning from a sister because the Most High, His image also reflects on them. And a lot of brothers took that as oh, brother, you weak for learning from a woman. And right here, and the prime example is a sister called in and built with another brother, and as you can see, there was a beautiful build of exchange. There was no, oh, sister, you can't speak to me, shut your mouth, none of that. The brother embraced, he heard what she said, he embraced the message, and he responded, and as you can see, we went somewhere. So I appreciate that, Brother Lex. Deeply I do.
Thank you. I always say, with regard to our women, I know that there are many traditions within the tradition, if that even makes sense. There's a lot of people who have their own interpretation, so that makes for many traditions within the tradition. But in what we can all see and read in Torah is that the very first woman who was created was called Eve in the English, but in the Hebrew, Hawa, right? And it is a composite of the first and foremost, the Hebrew word for life, which is Kai or Chaya, life. But there's another root, which is actually how her name is perfectly spelled, and is the deeper connection to the meaning of the word, the name Eve or Hawa in Hebrew. When you look at Eve's name in Hebrew, it's spelled Kate, Wav, He, and it gives us the tonnage of Hawa. When you go into the book of Psalms, chapter 19, verse 2, it says, night unto night declares knowledge. That word for declares knowledge, the word declare, is spelled Chet Wav He, exactly the same as Eve's name. So we're talking about speech, because when we talk about declaring something, we're talking about speaking it. So here's something to think about. The very first woman, her name is a composite of two concepts, life and speech. If anybody doesn't understand the correlation, we should go back to Genesis 1, where the Creator had to speak things into existence. And then go to the book of Proverbs where it says life and death is where? In the power of the tongue. So when we as men put a muzzle on that divine voice, dare I say, that the Creator put in woman, we are doing ourselves and our nation and humanity on a whole a disservice. This woman was created to speak life. Your very first teacher is your Ima, your mother. How dare you sit in any room and proclaim that women shouldn't teach? What book are you reading? And I'll end it there.
Wow, brother. Praise the Most High for that information. See, I don't have this attitude to where I'm like, I know everything. I need to know that. Right there, I learned something brand new according to the root of the Hebraic thought of the concept you just brought out, man. And I'm going to go back and listen to this and take some deep notes to do more of a thorough study on that. I thank you, brother, for sharing that with us, man. That was powerful. Praise the Most High for that information. Most definitely. So now in this evening, what we're going to do, we're going to go into the next part of the teaching or expound some more within in the law and the prophets. What I'm going to do, brother, if you don't mind, could we look at Isaiah 33 real quick, and then if you want to pick it up from there, we'll go from there. You okay with that?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm learning. You know what I'm saying? I'm sitting here soaking up like a sponge. You know, Sister Ashanti, it's always good to hear from her. Sister Doris, Brother Mercy. It's a great lesson. So what you've been doing is fine. I'm here.
All right, for sure. All right. So what we're going to do, for those who are listening, everybody, we're going to turn to Isaiah 33.
You want me to read?
If you would like to, brother. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Where you want me to start at?
Let's pick it up in verse 15.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to go with 15 to 17 or 16? 16.
Yeah, you know what? Read 15 and 16. Just read 15 real quick, and then
okay, I got you.
Yep.
Isaiah 33:15, and I'm in the King James. He that walketh righteously and speaketh uprightly, he that despises the gain of oppressions, that shaketh his hands from holding off bribes, that stoppeth his ears from hearing of blood, and shutteth his eyes from seeing evil.
That's powerful right there, my brother. And these are actions. He that walketh righteously, speaketh upright. These are ways of conduct. And it also says, he that despiseth the gain of oppression. He that he that shaketh his hands from holding of bribes, that stoppeth his ears from hearing of blood, and shutteth his eyes from seeing evil. These are actions. These are actions that we see, and we also, my understanding, I also see this in Abraham. I see this in Jacob, and I see this in other examples of Israelites throughout the text. So read 16.
Give me 1 second. I got to check on something else.
Oh, you know what? I can pick it up until you get back. It's all good. Verse 16. He shall dwell on high. His place of defense shall be the munitions of rocks. Bread shall be given him. His water shall be sure. So what we see is, to be an Israelite, like Brother Zion was saying earlier, the first thing we should be thinking of is righteousness. And right here, when we read in verse 15 and 16, this is based on those who are righteous. I read 15 again. He that walketh righteously and speaketh uprightly, he that despiseth the gain of oppressions, he that speaketh his hands from holding of bribes, that stoppeth his ears from hearing blood, and shutteth his eyes from seeing evil. We can read various examples of men of the Most High who stood up against oppression, who stood up against injustice, who were upright and who conducted themselves properly. And Brother Zion, if you don't mind, you want to expound real quick before we move on to the next scriptures?
Absolutely. There's one particular part of this particular verse that really stood out to me as I reread it right now. I'll read the whole thing again. It says, "He who walks righteously and speaks uprightly, he who despises the gain of oppression, he who shakes his hands from holding bribes," and this is the part that really stood out to me, "he who stops his ears from hearing of blood." What does that even mean? He who stops his ears from hearing of blood. That is literally talking about those that entertain conversations that are destructive, either literally or figuratively. Think about, on a day-to-day basis, how often many of us who even walk the walk entertain destructive conversations. When we are pursuing a relationship with the Creator, which is, i.e., righteousness, the pursuit of holiness, like, as you know, I tried to break down earlier the word zedek, the word for righteous. The first part, zedah, is a hunter or pursuer, and the last part is kuf, which is the initial letter kuf, which is monkey or emulation, and even the word kadosh, holiness in Hebrew, or to be set apart, the initial letter is again that kuf. So the word righteous is zadeh or zedah kuf. He who is in pursuit of holiness, or i.e., a person who is in pursuit of a relationship with God. You cannot be called righteous if you're not pursuing a relationship with God. Like we as Israelites, we talk to people every day who are outside of this way of life. And they say, so long as I do good things, God is watching, God knows my heart. No, he don't. If you are not pursuing a relationship with the Creator as he defined, because we know we don't set the path to the Creator. He sets it up for us. He is the designer. Can you imagine getting an intricate and sophisticated, let's say, audio device, radio, that this thing is so brand new and sophisticated that you say, I know I'm not going to be able to operate this on my own. So what do? You go to the manual, you go to the instructions, because obviously the person who designed it know how it works. Well, the Creator is the fashioner of all souls. Doesn't it make sense that if we want to succeed in this thing called life, that we follow the one who designed it? So this is why following Torah is so important. This is why pursuing a relationship with God has to be on his terms and not ours. People really believe in their heart that they can literally define their path to the Creator. Oh, I just got to do this. If I do this, God, no, that's not how it works. The Creator is the one who laid the foundation and said it very, very clear. And I think that's very, very important to hone in on to.
Thank you, brother. We appreciate that once again. Brother Anonymous, you want to expand on real quick?
Yeah, I just got back. Did y'all go over 16 already?
Yeah, we most definitely already did.
All right, so yeah, I'll because I know Brother Zion just brought out what he saw in 15. And it, like he just keeps saying, this conversation is incredible. So if we go to 16, and I'll briefly address the part where it says, so I'll read it. He shall dwell on high. His place of defense shall be in the munitions of rocks. Bread shall be given him. His water shall be sure. He said it perfectly. It's so important that we really digest and understand the language, and also understand the many times that these words pop up throughout various forms of the text. And I'll just deal with his place of defense shall be the munitions of rocks. We understand munitions. I'm just going to address rocks. And this is the Hebrew word selah. And I'll just briefly give you some brief points of where you can understand where the prophet was going with this. Like if we go to the book of Psalms, in Psalms 18, verse 2, it reads the Lord, or the Creator, or Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, the Tetragrammaton, whatever word we want to use, is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my strength, in whom I will trust, my buckler and the horn of my salvation and my high tower. You see pretty much the same language in Psalms 31 as well. For thou art my rock and my fortress. Therefore, for thy name's sake, lead me and guide me. This is so both of these verses are key. If you go back to verse 15, and we're talking about walking righteously, and like Brother Zion brought out, getting your ears away from hearing blood, I'm going to start going into where my heart is at when we're really dealing and addressing Israel right now. We've talked about this some, and we're going to go deeper into this, especially when we start going into Yaakov. Right now, Israel, for lack of a better word, seems to be a bloodthirsty nation. We want to attack each other and treat each other as these N-words out in the street that the oppressor has taught us to be. And our place of defense shall be the munitions of rocks, or the fortress of the Lord of Yahuwah, who is our fortress, who is the guide and the teacher. This is what we learn in Torah, that he is our guide and he is our teacher. So why are we so bloodthirsty towards each other? I mean, he brought that out, and it really pierced me to think about. We love, and I say we, I'm not doing it, but we are a nation and we are tied together, so it's important that we use the proper words. As a nation, we are dead set on tearing each other apart when Torah is about building us up. I was explaining this the other day. The psyche of man is so tender, we don't even understand it. If someone continues to tell you over and over 1,000,000 times that you're nothing, that you're nobody special, then you're going to think you're nothing and nobody special. So if you hear it 1,000,000 times, you have to at least hear it 1,000,001 times telling you something to the contrary. So my point is this: we have to get to the point of teaching that we shall dwell on high because of walking righteously, not because of walking by our own understandings and our own anger because someone says something that we may disagree with, or because someone called me Israel and I'm a believer, or because someone called me a believer and I'm Israel. They're synonymous. That promise to Abram was to him, his descendants, and everyone in his household. So if we believe in this Torah and we believe in keeping this, we are all one unified body, and we need to understand how to get there. And beating each other up and using the scripture to reiterate my point, letting your ears hear of blood, opening your eyes to see evil, as a reverse of the last part of that verse which says shutting his eyes from evil. If we continue to live in this, i.e. letting our brothers hold the Bible open and cuss and yell at each other, that's not Kodesh. Continuing to live contrary to this Torah, we're not getting out of this captivity. We'll continue to stay here in the Most High. We'll raise up someone else. We have to understand this and get back to this. And I think that's where I know me and Brother B.A. were talking about in terms of addressing this when it comes to Torah. And I think this verse was so powerful with understanding that. And I'll fall back.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Praise the Most High. So, man, and with that being said, now let's go back to Jacob. Now let's really look into the concept of when he wrestled with the messenger or the angel or the malak in Genesis 32. Praise the Most High for the call. Most definitely some good building. I'm most definitely humbled by it myself. Sit back and be a student of the teachings of the Most High, and to have Zion LEXX on with us, man, is most definitely, we appreciate it. Anonymous Hebrew, I appreciate you. Appreciate you, Sal. And thank the Most High for all things, because he's the one who put it on our hearts to be. So he gets all the glory, and I appreciate all the brothers here for expounding. Most definitely is a beautiful thing, a beautiful thing. Genesis 32, and we're going to pick it up at let's go to verse 24. And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. And when he saw that he prevaileth not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint, as he wrestled with him. And he said, Let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. And he said unto him, What is thy name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, Thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince for as a prince hast thou power with God, and with men has prevailed. I read 29. And Jacob asked him and said, Tell me, I pray thee, thy name. Well, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Verse 28. I should stay there. Now the thing is this: Israel means to contend or to strive with Elohim or God. So when this messenger, the angel, when he is sitting up here telling him, you have strived, you striving with the Most High. You have strived with him. Not just literally right here, but, and we know earlier in the chapter we see that Jacob was having a hard time dealing with Esau and dealing with Laban. So as you can see that Jacob is striving with the Most High. And it also says in verse 28, I'll go back to it, it says, And he said, Thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel, for as a prince hast thou power with God, and with men has prevailed. In other words, you have endured, because you had decided to lean on the Most High. Now I'll let the brothers expound real quick. I'll fall back.
Okay, thank you. Powerful, man. I'm following. I'm listening. That name Israel, to strive with God and to prevail, is beyond powerful. But the nuance of meaning in it is something to pay attention to. We know that several names of the prophets alluded to a prophecy, and we know that all of the patriarchs, namely Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they were all prophets. They communed with the Creator, and they had a message for us. They were all prophets. Many of what we call now the major prophets, such as like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, their names contain a prophecy. So the name Isaiah, or in Hebrew, Yeshayahu, literally means Yahweh or Jehovah shall save. He shall bring salvation. Jeremiah, or in Hebrew, Yirmiyahu, means Yahweh or Jehovah will be lifted up. And as we know, what did Jeremiah speak of? He spoke of the Creator distancing himself from the nation of Israel, which is how the Babylonians were able to come in, attack, and exile us into bondage and slavery, because the Creator literally removed his presence from the temple, removed his presence from his people. He became lifted up. So Jeremiah's name was a prophecy of that impending doom. And Ezekiel's name in Hebrew is Yehezkel, which means Yahweh shall strengthen. The main idea of the prophecies in the book of Ezekiel was that, yeah, we know that you're in captivity, but when we focus on Ezekiel 1, which is known esoterically as Ma'aseh Merchava, which is the account of the chariot, and we look at Ezekiel chapters 40 through 46, again expounding upon the account of the chariot, we understand perfectly that Ezekiel is there to tell us that, yes, Jeremiah spoke of this impending exile. We are now currently revealing the exile. We are now currently living in the exile. But at the end of it all, Israel shall prevail. That is the very name of Israel. A lot of people don't realize that the name Yisrael, or as some of our brothers may say, even Yasharallah, right? There's a prophecy in our name, because that Yod is a future tense when it's a prefix. So it's literally saying he will strive and prevail. So you can't even call yourself an Israelite without acknowledging the success in the movement. So anyone, to add on to what I'm saying, to come out their face, let me use this language, sometimes I want to say things the way I feel it. To come out your face and say Israel is done away with means that you don't even understand the power in this beautiful language. If you understood the power in the language, if you understood what our names mean, you would understand perfectly that the very name Israel is a prophecy of our success. The Creator created us to lead mankind to Him. We are to be what? A light to the nations. That means we are to, and what does a light do? A light provides opportunity for people to do what? To see. So we are to bring and guide people towards the Creator of heaven and earth. So with that being said, there is success in that mission. Yes, we know that Israel is Sarael, because we say Yisrael, but it's really Yisrael. He shall strive with God and man, but yet prevail. But it's in the future. Don't forget that part, because there's a Yod prefix to Sarael. It's in the future, so we're talking about he will prevail. That's a prophecy of the success in the mission. But don't get it twisted, because a lot of people who may come to this understanding and say, wow, that's right. When you break it down in Hebrew, you see the success in the mission. It means that we will prevail. That's a prophecy. But it doesn't mean that you're going to be in that number. So you got to actually keep the law of the Creator to be counted. When we say we prevail, that means the people that's putting in work. But if you ain't putting in work, you ain't part of that we. This ain't French.
Well, good. And before Brother Anonymous expounds, I would just like to let the callers know. Callers, for those who are holding on, we're going to get to you. We're just going to build on a few more scriptures, and then after that, we'll get to the callers. So just be mindful. We're being mindful of the callers, and just be a little bit more patient. We know people want to expound and build with us, and we have no issue with that. You just have to build on a few more scriptures and bring out this, because we're bringing out this concept of Israel. As you can see, now we're going to go to some Israelites, and we're going to see the concept of the term Israel, what it means. And so, Anonymous, you go right ahead, brother.
I just want to quickly point out the necessity for this community to really learn the language. I love this language, and I've played it back today to let what I consider to be our senior, the more expert in the language, expound and just show you how not only is the language beautiful, but it's so connected. It all connects to each other. And I'm just going to point out one little portion of this Sarah or Israel. Do you not see Sarah in that name? Because I know earlier we were speaking about our women. Do you not understand that? Do you not see the power just of that in itself? If you break that word down, it is a compound word. You're dealing with El, and then you're dealing with Sarah. The essence of the balance that is needed in our community shows that we will not truly attain that climb from being Yaakov to Yisrael until we all learn the balance. Not only just the men, but also the women. Not only just reading and being able to translate, but truly embracing the language, because in that you see all of the connections. I mean, if you're like me or anyone else that really studies this language, sometimes you find yourself up to 2 or 3 in the morning just really parsing these words and going scripture to scripture, letter for letter, word for word, playing with bilateral and trilateral roots and seeing how everything works and understanding prefixes and suffixes, and then you come to the end of it and say, oh, my goodness, I can't believe I missed that. Oh, my goodness, that's where we're going. Oh, like he said, this is a future thing. We are coming into this right now. The only way, once again, and I'll keep repeating it now because this is my complete understanding, the only way we come out of this captivity is to unite through this language, I believe, because it is going to be this language that really teaches us and gets us all the way over the mountain, so to speak. And if Brother Zion wants to touch on Sarah being in there, that would be great. But if not, I think it behooves all of us to take the time and go back and really just study that part of it. And then if you go to 30, because some people may, because BA didn't read verse 30, some people may say, especially those that are not in the community, well, he only wrestled with a man. Well, if you go down to verse 30, Yaakov said, "For I'll call this place Peniel," and that's a whole nother topic that we have to get into if we want, that we can go into if we like. But he says he called it that because he saw God face to face. He saw Elohim face to face. This is our goal, is to be able to turn and face. How did you put it, Brother Zion? To basically to connect spirit to spirit almost, right? With the Ruach. That Ruach is in us, right? We are Ruach, and we want to connect with the Ruach Kodesh, or the Ruach HaKodesh, because we know that is the spirit of the Most High. I won't go too much longer because we do want to do the scriptures and we do want to get to the callers, but it is so important to really break down this language, and that's my point.
That's right.
Man.
That's right. Looking at that word, Israel, since our brother asked, we see the root for Sarah in there. Sarah, believe. Let me open back up my Tanakh for a second. It says in the Hebrew, Im Yisrael ki sarit im Elohim ve im anashim va'tokal, which means ki sarit, for he has striven, im Elohim, with God, ve im anashim, and with man. And then it says va or wa tokal, and prevailed. Very, very powerful. Going back to that word Sarit, of course we see Sarai, which was the princess, which was her initial name. Then she became Sarah. What's so powerful about that name and that designation, that title, is that the root of Sarah and even Sarai, we always talk about the trilateral root in Hebrew, but there's also binary roots. And the word Sar is a root on its own, and it means general. This is the highest ranking official to an army. This is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
The woman who our father Avram, who later became Abraham, the woman he married, changed her name from Sarai, which is simply my princess, to Sarah, which, when you look at the root, this is the highest ranking official in an army. That means she is no joke, and hence why she is even called the mother of many nations. Remember, we always talk about Abraham's called the father of many nations. Well, we broke down the word father. It means the teacher of the house. The reason why the Creator said that Abraham shall be called the father of many nations is not because many nations literally descend from his loins. Look at the genealogy in the book of Genesis 25, where it talks about Abraham's progeny. He didn't have that many children. So there's not going to be that many different nationalities that come from Abraham. So when the Torah speaks about Abraham being the father of many nations, it's not literally talking about seed and blood. It's going back to that concept of the teacher of the house. And what makes a son is a person who follows the teachings of the father. Anybody who follows the teachings of Abraham is considered a son or daughter. We must never forget that, or else it would be impossible to say that Abraham is the father of many nations if, in fact, we haven't inspired people. We know that the general consensus today is that Islam, Christianity, and so-called Judaism, what do they call the Abrahamic faiths? Why do they refer to it as that? Because all of these faiths have an aspect of whose teachings? Abraham's. So this is very, very powerful. And then, it might sound crazy to some brothers out there when you break down the word Sarah and you say, the root is Sar, which is general, which when you go in the book of Numbers, And when you go in the book of Exodus and Leviticus, namely, you find that root sar for general and prince in several places, and they're both interchangeable. Because the prince in antiquity was trained to be a general. Like the culture of our ancient ancestors was a very powerful culture. Like presidents and leaders of nations today are some of the weakest men when we talk about world history. We know that kings of antiquity went out. Sorry.
No, I was agreeing with you. Keep going.
Absolutely. We know that kings of antiquity, these guys were trained warriors. They didn't sit down behind a council and have, send some troops out. That started with them. I almost slipped and said a bad word. But that started with the Greeks. You know how they sent out Achilles, let Achilles go fight? Nah. Right. King David went out to war because King David was a mighty and valiant man of God. And when we make the Creator our shield and our buckler, who shall we be afraid of? So, yeah, I don't think we should be afraid of the fact that the root of our mother's name, Sarah, is general, which we would equate with an army, which we're going to say, damn, but, that's not really a woman's thing. Stop women. Because I did read where there's some women that actually drove a tent peg behind the commander of another army's head. Was it not? Yael in the book of Judges, what did she do? She was a bad motorcycle. She took a tent peg and drove it right through his head. She got busy. You think our sisters didn't get busy in the name of the Creator when they had to? So make no mistake about it. We must give great respect. And then I want to end the point on this. If Abraham is the father of many nations because nations follow his teachings, and people think that women shouldn't be teaching, then I got to ask you, what do you think the Torah was trying to insinuate when it said that Sarah was the mother of many nations? I'll leave it there.
You see, a lot of brothers who always say, we ready for this walk, or we ready for this culture. Just based on that information that you just shared with us, Zion, there's a lot of brothers who run their mouth and say they're ready to embrace being an Israelite or embrace this Hebraic thought. They have a phobia and hate for women. And if you have a phobia and hate for women, you're not ready for the Most High to reveal His plan to you. Because you ain't going, and we always talk about nation building and building the kingdom. You ain't no nation building going on without our sisters. I don't associate it with a bunch of brothers who call themselves hating women or they feel like a woman shouldn't teach. I don't want no company with you or any type of talk of nation building if you think it's going to be a bunch of dudes. I beg you.
You're damn right. Because what we got to remember is that our women play a very important part in the rearing up of the minds of our nation. I like how you said that we don't have a nation without women, and a lot of people think that that's limited to the women or the childbearers. But I'm honing in on that which makes nations, like culture. Women preserve culture. We have to really and thoroughly understand that, and more importantly, understand the processes involved in preserving culture. The only way you can preserve culture is through teaching or oral traditions. Women are the ones who carry oral traditions because women are mostly the ones who do what? Write, choreograph, and record what? Song. Don't the Torah say that Miriam, our foremother, led the women in the wilderness in what? In song, in the book of Exodus chapter 15? Song
yes, sir.
Preserves culture. And it's a very, very powerful thing. And I'm not just, pointing to something as soft as singing and, limiting women's strength, because also there's another side to women. And another woman called Deborah, who I remember, there's a brother by the name of Phinehas, if I'm even saying it right. For those who read Hebrew so much, you have trouble sometimes saying the English words. I think his name is Phinehas, right, in the book of Numbers. He was contemporary with Deborah now in the book of Judges, when you check the genealogy. Phinehas was alive when she was made the judge. Think about that. Wasn't he awarded with being a valiant person when in the midst of the Midianite camp he slayed a bunch of them because they was trying to, get crazy with their sexual intimacy during that moment, and he went and he put a sword through the whole camp, and the Creator made a name of him? Camp. Remember that, right? Well, guess what? He's a contemporary of Deborah. That means the Creator had to look past him and pick her. That's deep.
Wow.
Think about that.
Hey, that's powerful, bro. Basic stuff written in the law and the prophets, and we have our brothers who claim to know the text. But these same brothers who spew that propaganda or that rhetoric that they know the text will just somehow forget about that and move on to this imperialistic doctrine of Europe that they learned from Europeans.
Right.
And that's not a strike against anyone from Europe. That's just that culture came out of Europe, or well, really prior to that. But our people, we have been taught this way, the way we conduct ourselves in this day and age from Europeans, and it is a shame that we subject the Most High to the way of the slave master. It is a shame, but we want to call ourselves Israel. But I know time is getting low, so we want to get on to the next few scriptures, and we'll go to the callers. But the points that you guys made, this also lines up with meekness. To be meek means to allow the Most High to impose His will upon you. And what you just talked about with Deborah and the gentleman, I forget the brother's name, which was mentioned in the book of Judges, he took it upon himself to go against the enemies of the Most High.
That's right.
And those enemies were doing things that were wicked. Meekness also means to allow the Most High to oppose His will upon you. And if need be, you may have to take some things into your own hands, but the Most High is giving you that right to do it.
That's right.
So what I would like to do, let's go to Numbers chapter 12. Let's build on a couple of scriptures, and then we'll go to the callers. Numbers chapter 12. We're going to go to an example of an Israelite who was known to be meek.
Bring it out.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Like I said, to be an Israelite is deeper than just this concept of being super gangster and being militant on YouTube. It's deeper than that. Most definitely.
Talk about it.
And
what up, gang?
We're gonna pick it up at we're gonna pick it up at verse 1. Numbers chapter 12, verse 1. And Miriam and Aaron spake against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. And they said, hath the Lord or Yahweh indeed spoken only by Moses? Had he not spoken also by us? And he heard it. Now the man Moses was very meek above all men which were upon the face of the earth. Let's just stop there real quick. Meek. Now, Anonymous, my brother, I know you were expounding on meekness the other day. You have a few moments to spell on it before we go to the next scriptures, if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's knock it out. So this word meek, and I'm sure Brother Zion will want to get into it as well. It is the Hebrew word. We'll just deal with the Strongs. I'll be really bland with it. In the Strongs, it's H60. 6035. It's a nav. And I'm going to go, I'll just do it. So I'll do it first with the first half of it, and then I'm going to go to the root. And I was talking to Brother B.A. about balance. So the word, and this is a masculine noun. So we're talking about poor, humble, afflicted, meek. And so it sounds weak, right? It sounds as though someone who just cannot get over, they're just a stepping stool almost. But if Moses is called weak, or Moshe is called weak, if you think that brother was weak, and this is who the Most High used to free our people, then I don't know what to tell you. You need to go back and really study. Because what we're seeing here is what we consider to be balance. This brother has the keys of the nation, basically. He has all of these people at his disposal. He could have been a tyrant. He could have led these people astray. He could have lied and said, the Most High said, we're going to ride up and go do all of this. Instead, he was meek enough to hear from the Most High and to let the Most High talk to him, especially when you get to the book of Deuteronomy and see just the culmination of his growth. That's weakness, that's wisdom, right? Now, the root of the word comes from 6031. That's Hebrews 6031. That is anah. And this is to be occupied, to be busy with. This is where you really start to see the real root of it. It's what we're talking about when we're really dealing with meekness is to actually be so focused on what the Creator is saying that you have pushed everything else aside. Any personal things, they're going to the side. And I'm 100% occupied and busy with, afflicted with, to the point of being humbled with carrying out the mission of the Creator. And that's what Moshe was. He was so busy being about the Father's business. That's what we say in the New Testament, right? I'm about the Father's business.
That's right.
I don't think a lot of us know what that means, though. But so occupied and busy with being about the Father's business that none of this other stuff mattered. Right? We saw him make one mistake when he struck that rock. But for the most part, and even in that, the Most High still said that this is my man. Don't even worry about it. This is still my guy. The humility of that man to be humble enough to stay and deal with all of those, I don't want to call them names, but all of them wishy-washy Israelites. Anytime there was an issue, what did he do? He said, hold up, all right, let me go talk to the Creator, and I'll come back and let you know. He didn't just go off half-cocked because somebody made a video about him or somebody said something he didn't like because they was going against him. He actually went to the Most High and said, look, they feel like they should be leading too. The Most High said, hold up, I'm going to deal with them today. And I'm paraphrasing a lot. But
right.
I'm making the point of understanding this word meekness truly means to be occupied, to truly be busy with something. And what Moses was busy with was getting down for the Creator. And I'll fall back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Brother Zion, before you expound, let's look at an example of the meekness of Moses. Let's look at an example. After we read this, then, brother, most definitely will love to hear your words, so we'll go to the callers if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Let's go to Exodus chapter 2. Exodus chapter 2. We're going to pick up at verse 16, I believe. Yes. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled their trongs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. And when they came to reveal their father, he said, how is it that you are come so soon today? And they said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us and watered the flock. I'm going to stop right there. A lot of people read past that. Moses came to the rescue of those who were in need. This is an example of meekness right here. And Brother Lex, if you would like to, you can go ahead and expound.
Absolutely, man. I mean, the key, since we're talking about humility, the key to the greatness of Moses was his humility. My teacher, his name is Chief Naftali. He's known by here in New York. And he has over 57 years of Torah application and practice. And he told us in the early 90s something that will never escape me. He said, the greater thou art, the more humble thyself. The greater thou art, the more humble yourself. The greater you are, the more humble you should be. So the idea of anal, which is the Hebrew word for humility in the Torah, it's also the Hebrew word for being lowly. You ever been in a room with people so intellectually superior, if you will, if I may use that in this instance, to yourself, that you just shut up and let them talk? I'm in a room like that every time I'm in a room with my elders. I shut up and I let them talk because I know what I have is nothing compared to what they know. And I want to soak and glean from it. So I literally sit there with my mouth shut. I shut up, as youngsters should do in a room for the elders. Like the Torah says, don't be so quick to give the sacrifice of fools, which is speech. Sometimes you got to shut up. The message is there. So Moses thought of himself so low that surrender allowed for the Creator to completely take over. And this was the power that all prophets had, because a prophet is a navi or nabi in Hebrew. And the root of nabi is nev, nun, yod, bait, which is fruit, but it's talking about the fruit of the lips. So again, it's talking about speech. There's another root for prophet, nabi, which is navuv, nun, bait, navuv or nabab, depending on how you pronounce the bait, as a bait or as a vait. Nonetheless, it's nun, bait, and it literally means a channel, or to channel, or vessel, empty vessel, hollow. Mm. A prophet had to literally empty himself of all ego and pride, because that was the only way that the Creator could come in and fill himself up and do great things through that prophet. The Creator cannot work with you when you think the world of yourself. You have to literally think of yourself as Zoak. I don't want to say S-H, you know what, but you will get what I'm alluding to. I'll use the Hebrew equivalent. You got to think of yourself as Zoak, or as poo-poo, as they say. Literally, if you want the Creator to fill your essence and work through you, the Creator must dominate you in order for him to work through you. So the prerequisite to attain prophecy, because prophecy wasn't a haphazard thing. You didn't just wake up one day, oh, I was a prophet. There was actually academies of prophet and school of prophets. We know that the prophet Elisha belonged to an actual academy or school where people actually learned how to edify themselves in order to attain a prophecy. Anyone can attain prophecy. There's actual methodology involved in it, and it's all concealed in the very language of the Torah. A lot of people don't understand or have a clue what's going on in Ezekiel 1. But if you understand truly what's going on in Ezekiel 1, you understand that the chief thing that Ezekiel was communicating in that chapter was the keys to enter the state of prophecy. When he talks about the glow, which in Hebrew is the nogah, when he talks about that speaking silence, which is the kashmal, that they translate as that amber color, but in Hebrew it's kashmal, which literally means speaking in silence, or in science, they call it synesthesia, where the mind is so deep in meditation that it hears color and sees sound. So at the foot of the mountain, we were at such a high level of spiritual proximity to God that Moses was able to pen, and all the people saw the lightning. What are you talking about? Lightning is sound. Wow. We're talking about scientifically what is called synesthesia. Synesthesia, which is the highest level of thought. We know that the human being is only using about 5% of his brain power. When you're reaching the 60, 70%, or damn near 85 to 90%, you're in the realm of what is science calls synesthesia, where all of reality goes back to its original source. So there is no differentiation between your senses. So you will literally see sound and hear color. I know I sound crazy, but let me stop there.
You're not crazy. That's the overall culmination of belief, and I'll leave it at that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And with that being said, thank you, Brother Lex. We have less than 20 minutes left on the air. Less than 20 minutes on the air. The phone number is, hold on for a second. For those who want to call in and expound the callers, the number, hold on. Sorry about that.
I got you. Let me jump in, man. It's 319-527-6239. 319-527-6239. I know you guys enjoying this dialogue, and like I always say, take down your notes. Hopefully you took down your notes already. But right now, it's time to go to the audience out there. Like BA said, we have less than 20 minutes on the air. Let's go to the people and see what you guys got to say. Let's go to 757-619. You're live.
Okay. Shalom. Shalom to everyone. This is your sister, Gavert, Dina. Born and raised in Brooklyn. I will be brief. Can I be heard? I'm sorry.
I was just saying shalom, sister, and greetings.
Yes, all right. Brooklyn, I had the privilege of being Isaki and the privilege of Big Shalom, the privilege of learning, as I'm saying, even in Kahal and Benyadat. You've said so very much. I appreciate you. I appreciate you all so very much. Such a wonderful conversation on today. I was trying to find this proverb quickly that talks about a fellow that's prone to hunger when you're sitting with the king. Cut your throat before you speak. Just sit and listen. And I'm not saying it properly. And I did want to just speak so quick. I don't want to feel rushed. So I'm going to go ahead and give a testimony. There was a lot that had been said on the earlier conversation. I want to thank the Most High first and foremost always for sending me this message today. Sending me through my sister, you and you. And I encourage everyone to just stay on that marathon, stay on that journey, stay on your path. It might be, and I liken this to a 26-mile marathon they run in New York City. They got one in Boston. You get to that 24th, 25th mile, and everything is hurting. Everything is hurting. Shalom, because I knew my son was going to come in here just as I began to speak, but it's okay. Stay on that journey. I love the use of the language. I love the all one and alone. I love the breakdown of the Hebrew. I love the question about love. My mission is my inspiration is to continue unity. I love the brother that had the strength to talk about the bloodthirsty Israelites. Oh, wow, that was powerful. So full of power. There's so much I wanted to say. I pray that this is a regular call, that I can come on again. Love the notion of listening. What a great characteristic. A good listener. Great listeners make great learners. I'm not going to go on any longer than there, just about the Hebrew language, because I could go on too, but I know you've got some time you want to be respective of. Even the language itself, every letter in Hebrew has a power. Every name, every word has a power. And if you look at the block letters of the Hebrew, every one contains a yod. The hands up, the power, the prayer, the faithfulness, the stress, the first 10 words of Scripture are 10 words. And God created the heaven. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. 10 words. The 10 Commandments. It's just a powerful conversation. I appreciate you all so very much. All peace and love and blessings to you, and may the Most High continue to bless your lives, your understandings. And question, is this call on the regular? Is this something you all do every
Yes,
day?
ma'am. We do this. I'm sorry, sister. Go ahead, finish up.
That was fine. You was gonna get me. You was answering my question. Appreciate your good listening skills.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. We do this every 2 weeks. Every Wednesday, every 2 weeks.
All right, hallelujah. All right, and the Most High continue to bless you all. Yes. Hallelujah.
Thank you, sister. We appreciate your words. Praise the Most High.
Before you leave, Sister Gaveret Adina.
Yes.
I'm known in this particular community as Zion LEXX, but my Hebrew name is Avdiel Ben Levi. I'm originally from Beth Shalom and Shema, and as you know, those teachers, my teachers, Prince Sapor,
Chief of Chiefs, Chief Naphtali, but more importantly, I came into knowledge of myself as an Israelite through the children of Crown Prince Zerishaddai, who's also from Bnei Zakim. I've been to Beth Elohim, and I've obviously been to Hashaba, and I've definitely been to Bnei Adat. As a matter of fact, I sent donations to the congregation that burnt down over the summer. So I'm very familiar with where you're telling me you come from, because where you come from, your schools of thought are the schools of thought that my teachers come from, as you know. I know you know my teachers.
Yes. Prince Zerishaddai was my very first Hebrew teacher, and even Moreh Mishael was my best
Moreh
teacher.
Mishael, there we go.
Yeah, I mean, just the best Hebrew teacher, in my humble opinion.
Hallelujah.
And I'm gonna dedicate myself. I do speak Hebrew. I'll give myself an intermediate level of understanding of the language, and I will pray that I will even be able to speak it so fluently. We could even think those thoughts and create those thoughts and send that energy to each other through that power of our language and our Creator. Hallelujah.
Absolutely. I want to add to what the sister was saying when she said that every single letter in the Hebrew alphabet has its own power, has its own intrinsic character. In fact, I recently wrote a book entitled The DNA of Sound, Exploring the Esoteric Language of Biblical Hebrew, where I actually have 22 chapters where I break down all 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, character by character. And the one thing that she said that really stood out to me that a lot of people may not be aware of is that every letter begins with a yod. Every single letter begins with a yod, and we know that yod is the 10th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and we know that the Torah speaks about the 10 words, which are, i.e., the 10 commandments. And in Genesis, we know of the 10 sayings of creation. The 10 sayings of creation correlate to the 10 commandments because we know that the world was created through the Torah. The Creator really looked into the Torah and created the universe. Hence why Proverbs chapter 8, verse 30 says, I was his uman, which we usually translate as nursling, but another variation of that translation is architect. And we know that an architect looks at a blueprint before he does anything. The Torah is the blueprint of the world, the blueprint of creation itself. Hence why even in modern science, they tell you that the laws of the physical universe predate the creation of the universe itself. It's the same thing in Hebraic thought. The Torah preceded creation.
Thank you, Brother Lex. We appreciate that, man. Powerful words. And Sal, let's go to the next caller. I know we were in the short on time.
All right, let's go to 347-303. You're live.
Shalom.
Hey, shalom.
Shalom. Shalom.
Yes, shalom.
Oh, you can hear me? Okay. This is Sister Aisha. I was listening to the call. Very interesting, very informative. One thing I'd like to say, and I know I spoke with many elders because when I came into this way of life, it was a very tumultuous journey, and it still is. And I noticed that, when a lot of Israelites, like the brother said, some very treacherous things to one another. Not to say that I didn't experience that in the Christian church, because I did. However, I had an elder sister tell me, Ima Naami, I said, Ima, how did you stay in this way of life over 50 years with all the, things that were done in Israel? And she said because she realized that she was not there to serve the people. She was there to serve the Most High. And no matter what the people did, right or wrong, she had to keep her focus on what the Most High wanted her to do. And I think there are times when we let the behavior of some Israelites dictate, how we, I guess the word was used earlier in the call, label. I don't want to be labeled as an Israelite. We don't want to be labeled as an Israelite, but we didn't mind being labeled as a Christian. The thing about it is we can't base Israelites. The Most High says that if you love him, to keep his commandments. Being an Israelite is loving the Most High, keeping his commandments, doing what he says. And I know it's difficult because we have to adapt ourselves back into doing. But it's not based on, well, this Israelite did this, so therefore I have to, always say, well, I'm not like those Israelites over there. You have many people coming back into this way of life. So I'm coming back. We all coming back from different places. And, the journey in coming back is not going to be always a smooth one for some people. It's going to be very difficult, and people have made a lot of error in this. I've seen many groups that, want to hold on to Christianity in some form of fashion. I will say one thing I notice is that some of us, including myself, and coming back in, we want to come into an Israelite way of life with a very Christian understanding. The idea of, when someone mentioned about women, the Torah never says that a woman shall learn in silence. The New Testament it says that. And, I know that some of our brothers, not all of them, will say, oh, y'all women need to be quiet. But that comes from a very New Testament. That comes from the book of 1 Timothy, I think, 2nd chapter. So sometimes even though we profess to be Israel and serve the Most High, we have taken on the ways of our oppressor, what was taught to us. And we have to, really get into the scripture, really get into the language. And I know I don't speak Hebrew besides a word here and there. I pray to learn it soon so I can get deeper and deeper into understanding as the Most High will allow me. But, the whole thing is that Yah gives us, and I know I don't want to offend anyone because I know some people don't use the term Yah, but I say Yah, the Most High, uses, he said we will be called, Israel. That's the name that he gives us. And we shouldn't feel as though that's a label. The idea that we believe in him is to serve him and do his commandments, not to say, well, I believe, like when we were Christians, you profess your life to JC and you go in the water and come out. Yah has a condition. He wants us to do the law, and the Torah is practical. It can be applied to your life practically. I think that we were taught in Christianity, from my understanding, that, we're never going to be able to do all of this, and the children of Israel sin, so we have JC to forgive us in the case of sinning. And I don't agree with that anymore. I know the Most High shows us compassion and mercy all the time. In getting back to the law is to get back to applying it to our daily lives, using it spiritually, but then using it practically as well. I think that as far as we have to be patient with one another, but at the same time, in being patient and teaching one another, we also, some of us have to let go of old ways. And when I hear people saying that, oh, well, I'm not leaving my church, or my church taught me about the Ten Commandments, every church mentioned the Ten Commandments and taught about it, but we can learn about the Ten Commandments, we can read it, but if you're breaking the first commandment or the second commandment, serving a deity that is not the Most High, then you can learn about it, but are we doing it? Are we applying it? So, these are things that, and I know it was very difficult for me because, excuse me, I don't know if my phone is messing up, but it was very difficult for me at first because it's a scary thing to have to leave everything that you were taught to do. And I'm not saying to, excuse me?
No, sir, I don't mean to be rude or interrupt. We have less than 5 minutes on the line.
Okay, so I'll stop there.
So one thing, yes, with all due respect, so it's not me coming against you. But when you read that in 1 Timothy, I will suggest that maybe when you get a chance to look up that word in the Greek, and it gives us much more clarity that it doesn't literally mean silence, like woman be quiet. It means that a woman should listen and be humble, not to be quiet.
But, a lot of the brothers that quote the New Testament, they don't say it like that. They say, well, woman, you should be quiet, and that's what's quoted.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And one thing about it, a lot of our brothers, we stress to a lot of them, if we're going to start examining the Greek, the Greek language in the New Testament, it's best if we start doing word studies. And a lot of brothers who are King James bound only, they refuse to because they're so in love with doctrine. But I do understand your point, sisters, and I hate to cut you off because we got less than like 3 minutes. So I appreciate you, sister. If you would like, every 2 weeks, every Wednesday night, we have these discussions based on these topics, you can call in and always expound, because we love our women here and we love our sisters, and women can speak freely here. We do not bound them by no type of doctrine. Hello?
Yeah. So we go. Yeah. I'll share some audio. Yeah, we go about getting some last words from everybody. Just get some last words.
Yeah, brother Lex. Yeah, brother Lex, you go right ahead, brother.
Yeah. I want to say this to the sister that just called. Many of the things that the sister said is what is taught in the community that I come from, and namely the temple that I come from. But what I want to say to the sister in a very strong voice is that many of the teachings that I came up hearing about the New Testament, so-called New Testament, I began to, I don't want to say depreciate more, but I began in my own study to appreciate a lot of the teachings in the New Testament for many reasons. One of which you mentioned. I won't go into it too much before I'm kicked out of the so-called non-Messianic community, but I'm an honest brother and I always speak honest scholarship, so I'll say this. That particular verse in Timothy, we have to understand that the epistles that are being written, they're being written by apostles, and some of the epistles that Paul is writing is writing to people that are in certain cities and certain nations in exile. So what Timothy is writing there is not applying to everyone. He's talking about a particular group of women that belong to a particular region, and there was an issue going on in the region with those women, and that was the judgment that they came to. I've been in temples right here in New York where women weren't told to be quiet, but when there was issues, there was definitely some women that were told that they need to be silenced. I've seen that, and I'm talking about in non-Messianic circles. So that judgment that you see in the New Testament, I actually watched played out in Old Testament synagogues before. I'm an honest brother. Old Testament people going to hate me right now for saying that, but I got to speak truth. I always speak truth. I think that we had a beautiful conversation tonight without talking about that dividing line. You know, we didn't need to speak about so-called JC in that way. We didn't need to speak about new versus old. We just spoke Torah, because this is the thing that really, really unites us, the Torah and the Creator, because we know that Yeshua followed the Torah and taught Torah. There are some of us in the Old Testament so-called community that may disagree with certain things that we see, but nonetheless, the heart from my studies that I've read, I saw where he taught Torah. And I'd be more than willing and more than open to have this dialogue with any Old Testament Israelite who sees that book in that kind of way, to kind of show you a different outlook. I'm not trying to convert you. I don't base my actions in Torah on the teachings in the New, but I think that there's a lot of teachings in the New that I could share within the community of so-called Old Testament Israelites that would cause you to appreciate the history in it that much more.
Thank you, Brother Zion. We appreciate your words, man. Thank you very much. Brother Anonymous?
I think Brother Zion handled it very well. I will just say this. I just go to the root of the matter. The word that we use for silence in Greek is hesochia. The root word of it is a word I always mess up, but the word hesochia is 2271. If you go to the root of that, it's hesochia. Both words, even if you deal with the first one, it's talking about a description of way of life, not meddling in people's affairs. And if you go deeper into the word, it's just talking about being in doing things orderly in service, and that goes for men as well. So this is not, me just, I want to jump on my New Testament bandwagon, wave my New Testament flag. It's more about trying to get to the root of the words and the things that are in that book that are wrong, we need to get rid of. And I won't go into detail what we are doing to dispel some of the myths, but we are working on that as well. So I think Brother Zion spoke to the best point is our whole goal of this conversation is to focus more on Torah, because I do see that that's what Yahusha was teaching. And I won't go deeper into that. But I will say this. Applaud Brother Zion for being honest. And I don't think he was trying to convert anybody to any way, shape, or form. But we have to be honest if we're going to grow. We have to be honest as well as New Testament believers or whatever we want to call ourselves, that the law ain't done away with. So, if we're going to grow, we all have to, swallow some bitter pills and try to come to some real truth and understanding and get rid of the garbage and hold on to the truth. So, but I applaud the sister for calling in, and thank you for calling. Please call in anytime you hear us on and continue to participate, sir.
Thank you, Anonymous. We appreciate your words, brother. Much love to you. Much love to Zion Lex. We deeply appreciate him for coming out of his busy schedule to build with us. And Zion Lex, if you're still there, just to let you know, brother, you are always welcome to the Man Up segment. Feel free to always stay in contact with me on social media through Facebook, through Instagram. Most definitely, brother, I've learned a lot today just listening to you speak. I've always learned from you for the few years I've watched you on the internet. So, brother, most definitely I would like to continue to keep a rapport with you. So, as brothers, so we can learn from each other, because I most definitely was very informed tonight on a lot of the Hebraic words you were bringing out. And with that being said, we thank the Most High for bringing us together, for expounding on His knowledge and His wisdom and His way. Like you said, my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts. And so we want to understand that. And we thank the Most High again for revealing what it means to be an Israelite. And as we saw it in Abraham, we saw it in Isaac, we see it in Jacob, and we've seen it through Moses, and then there's various other individuals in the text that also show more of the actions of an Israelite and what it consists of, what it truly means, because the Most High, He is the one that called it into action. And with that being said, Sal, let's take it away.